Good evening to all here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. It's Hawkeye Hangout on a Wednesday evening, as we are each and every Wednesday evening taking your phone calls and taking your questions as we lead up to another Iowa football game this Saturday. The Hawkeyes with an opportunity to get back over 500. Can you believe we're saying that here in early November? So this is not going to be, I promise you this is not going to be a 2 to 3 hour show tonight. All right. I've had a long day. I sure hope we don't need 2 to 3 hours to lament. Hopefully there's not a ton of lamenting. Did publish a video earlier today that was a segment that I thought was somewhat interesting from our basketball postgame show on Monday following Iowa's exhibition win. And yeah, I mean, the whole point of the video is I think we're overreact. Some people are overreacting to what we saw on Saturday. I think some people maybe are reacting. I think the bottom line is it's somewhere in between, right? It's somewhere in between of tons of improvement and no improvement. I mean, there was obviously improvement. Iowa beat an inferior team on Saturday, much inferior team, no question about it. But you can't dismiss that. And the line played well. Quarterback played well. Knock on wood, because of, I think, everything working around him. He's proven that in the past that he can make makeables when everything around him is working. It helps having Deontay Vines back healthy. It helps having time to throw the football, right? And certainly the Northwestern offense was nothing to be feared either. So when you can play from ahead, it certainly takes the pressure off your quarterback. So here's how this works. If you're new to the show, you can give us a call, 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. I'll throw it up here on the bottom line. You can also join by video. There's a link in the description below to join by StreamYard. make your voice heard, make your face heard if you're seen, if you will. You want to jump on by video, you're more than welcome to do that. Reminder to everybody, if you've not done so, you can certainly, you're supporting our show when you support our sponsors. We've got a couple of generous sponsors who have put themselves out there to sponsor this very show week after week. We appreciate them. You can find information on our sponsors in the description below, and you can donate to the channel in the description below by means of PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. You can do that in the description below. Let's get to our first caller who's been waiting here for quite some time already. I think he was here before I was. Ryan, you're with us. Ryan, how you doing, sir?
Hey, Corey, what's going on?
Not much, man. It's a warm, unseasonably warm November day, so I enjoyed it. Yourself?
Yeah, I actually took a jacket to work, and yeah, forget that. It was cold this morning, but yeah. So I don't think we learned anything much last week. We can beat up on a bad team. We actually Nevada game, the worst team we supposedly played. This team may have been worse. And it's shocking to me how bad Northwestern has gotten, because they always have been a team that can come out and bite you, but obviously not this year. It's the Purdue game upsets me annually, probably more than any other game.
Okay.
We just, even last year, granted, Phil Parker's allowed to have a bad game every once in a great while. We let David Bell set a Kinnick record for receiving against us. We did not adjust once. And then when Bell was gone, I got thinking, well, it'll never get worse than that. So, I guess they have a guy named Jones who's a pretty good player. And boy, wouldn't it be interesting to see what Iowa could do if they had a player like Charlie Jones on their team?
I thought that was interesting, and I don't know if not to segue, Ryan, but Tyler, is it Call Clow in the chat? Appreciate Tyler's comment here. I'd love an explanation to the question here from Tyler. Why does Kirk have an excuse for everything? And I don't know if Tyler's alluding to the comment made on Tuesday, Ryan. I did find it interesting in the press conference. I don't know if you caught it, but Kirk Ferentz was asked about Charlie Jones' production at Purdue. And Kirk's way of going about the answer to that question was sort of, I don't want to say crediting Iowa, but in a way it was, he flat out said it. We saw improvement from Charlie in the spring here. So we can't say that he was underutilized here because we never got a chance to utilize the 2022 version of Charlie. So basically implying that he made some massive jump in the spring and that the system and the offense has nothing to do with the increase in production. He did talk about how Purdue throws the ball around the yard a lot, but I guess that's the right way for him to go about it if you want to save face and you want to, I don't know if you're going to fool recruits. Do you buy that, Ryan, that Charlie
not even close?
A massive jump in the spring?
Well, if you recall, we only targeted him maybe at most 3 times a game. But when we did target him, he had some extremely impressive catches. He had a great touchdown, a great contested touchdown in the Penn State game last year. I believe he had a really awesome catch in the Iowa State game last year.
Yes, he did.
There's just
for a touchdown, by the way.
Right. The guy, the little bit they used him, the guy was tremendous. And, if we were having this conversation exactly a year ago, we would probably be saying is, well, we haven't seen enough of him to say that he's got the makings to be a so-called number 1 wide receiver on an offense because he wasn't utilized enough. But then you get a quarterback who can throw, you get a scheme that is exciting, that throws the ball downfield, and Purdue. The thing is I think Kirk just hates offenses like Purdue has. He does not like, he despises the spread. And if you're going to have a more old school so-called pro style offense that he calls it, you still have to throw down the field a little bit, use waste downs like you and Don have been discussing for quite a while. I fear very much that, our number 3 or number 4 wide receiver last year that we let get away is going to come back and have a tremendous game, beat us. And I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong.
Ryan, I was going to say, that is one thing that's frustrated me with certain people in the Iowa media and certain people in the fan base. They continue to bring up how Charlie, he was he didn't get on the field. He couldn't make it on the field last year on offense. He was the 4th or 5th guy. Well, he was the 4th or 5th guy because Iowa made him the 4th or 5th guy. It's not for lack of ability that he was the 4th or 5th receiver. There's a difference between, especially at Iowa, wide receiver. There's a difference between being listed as the 4th or 5th best wide receiver and actually being the 4th or 5th best wide receiver. And we're seeing that because, look, I mean, I haven't watched every Purdue snap this year, far from it. But in the games that I've watched, even with the loss of Bell, they lost Rondell Moore in recent years. I talked with Mark Rogers yesterday, and we talked about Terry Wright was a really good receiver that they had. They had the kid back in 2017 whose name I remember in the moment, and I forget 5 seconds later.
Didn't their number 2? They lost their number 2 as well to grades, I think. I don't remember his name.
I believe that was the other Wright, I believe. So my point is, Ryan, I watched those games with Charlie involved, and he's the best receiver on the field. But they got other receivers. I mean, they got guys who'd be starting at Iowa, minus just Charlie. Probably everybody would be, in the top 4 or 5 at Purdue would be starting at Iowa. So, yeah, it's a lack of evaluation, regardless of what Kirk says. And he may be right. Maybe Charlie did make a step, take a decent step forward on offense this spring, but it doesn't come close to making up for the lack of involvement last year. And, that comes down to evaluation. Primarily, I'd like to say, because again, I don't think he got to Purdue in June and all of a sudden Braum just developed him into a star.
Right.
It's reasonable to think he had this ability when he was at Iowa and he just wasn't evaluated properly. And then of course utilized on game day.
Well, and then I just, I wish Charlie well. I have no reason to root against him except for Saturday. The thing is though, is I think he's going to be the poster child of why you do not want to come to Iowa if you're a skilled offensive player. And, the recruiting class doesn't show a whole lot of, actually about none. Do we have any receivers coming in? Maybe one athlete that will play receiver.
We have one.
Yeah. So the cavalry is not coming. I think you put a video out, was it today or yesterday? I didn't watch it yet, about whether or not we're going to lose players to the portal and whatnot. I don't know if you're hearing anything or if it's, just a gut feel, but I mean, I would certainly assume so. I mean, I would hate to see what our conversation is going to be like come December after the Nebraska game.
Well, it's going to be, I'll say this, and I don't take pleasure in this, but I guess it'll be good for business because people will be talking about Iowa football because I do think there'll be more activity. And I'm not saying that I still have confidence in the culture, and I know some people will challenge me on this. I still have confidence in the culture that Kirk has built here to where if anybody can withstand just terrible play on the field on one side of the ball and somehow retain guys, it's probably Kirk. Because they were bad last year on offense, Ryan, and they lost some guys, Desmond Hudson and Quavon Matthews, but those guys didn't see the field. The one guy they did lose that mattered was Charlie. Tyrone did even.
Speaking of which, I heard some really good things about Jacob Bostock. I heard some great things about him in the summer, and obviously he's redshirting, I guess, but wouldn't this be a year to unless he's way behind, and who knows.
Well, Jacob Bostic has dealt with injuries. I don't even know that he was available until week 4.
Okay.
He may still be dealing with an injury. I don't know. But yeah, I think it gets to that point. They're probably looking to redshirt him now that Vines is back healthy. When Vines was out and Brecht was out, boy, you take anybody back at that point. You're not talking about a redshirt then. But I don't think Keegan Johnson's playing this year. So yeah, it would be nice to have a guy like Bostic, and he's got size. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see the future at wide receiver. Who stays, who goes. They're not going to have a lot of depth. We know there's guys graduating. I mean, Reganey's graduating. But the interesting thing about it, Ryan, is Bostic and Brecht kind of have the same. I mean, they're both the 6'2", taller style receiver. Brecht has a baseball future. I think that's clear. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what Iowa does with those guys.
Regarding Keegan Johnson, do you have a gut feeling that this is probably a case where maybe he let the coaches know that he's going to move on at the semester, and for everyone to save face, so blame the injury? Or was it, because I guess it was a hamstring injury, and I know hammies last a while, but I wouldn't think this long. I have no idea, but he would be the first one that I guess is probably gone by December 1st.
Yeah, I don't know if he said something to the coaches. I don't know what the situation there is. I get the feeling that maybe it's not quite as dire of an injury situation as we're made to believe it is. I kind of felt that, all season. I know hamstrings are weird, so I get it. But I don't want to imply that Kirk has been disingenuous as it relates to Keegan, but that's my hunch. I don't think he's going to play this year, and whether that means he'll be back next year or not, I would probably lean towards no, but I don't know that. He may be back. He may be back. I don't know. Maybe it is a hamstring that he's had a lot of health issues, and Kirk did bring that up the other day. Remember, he was out of the bowl game because of an abdominal problem.
Right.
So he's had problems. There might have been some personal stuff going on. I can't say one way or the other.
Right. I hate to lose a talent like that, because I really think if we could just get a quarterback in there that, anything is honestly a little better than what we have going today. Get some of this talent rolling that we do have. Hopefully we retain a few and can rebuild this offense. So I really hope we win. I don't think we will. Just Brom knows how to solve our defense, is what it kind of comes down to. I don't know why he's not a more successful coach overall, but he sure has Iowa's number.
He has. I'm with you. Big plays are going to be a huge storyline in this game, because Charlie Jones makes big plays, and Brom's offense is, they create big plays, and Iowa's defense is bred to stop big plays. So it's always the storyline.
All right. Well, hey, man, great show. Thanks a lot for taking my call.
Appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you, sir. All right, let's move along. We've got the big time boiler here, along with Austin and James. I want to give a shout out, first of all, though, to Hawkeye Howard. How about this guy? Open heart surgery yesterday. He's on with us. Hawkeye Howard, it's good to see that, hear that you pulled through well. I think it was your wife that sent me a message today and let me know that you were recovering in ICU. The fact that you're on here sending us a chat is incredible to me. So keep on the mend, Hawkeye Howard, and we'll hopefully see a win on Saturday. Speaking of the game on Saturday, let's get a viewpoint from the other side. We've got Grant Michael here of the Big Time Boiler. Grant, how you doing today, sir? You are on mute.
You think I would know better than that?
You're good, man. How are you?
Doing well. How are you doing, Corey?
I'm hanging in there. Yeah, been a long day, but boy, it's going to be with an early kick on Saturday. It's going to be here before you know it.
It is, and some maybe bad weather in the forecast. I don't know if you've looked at that or not, but
I have looked at it, yes, and I just to give you some perspective, Grant, because you're aware that we do post game coverage with Coach Don Patterson every week. The only other game that I was at this year was a game in Kinnick. You may remember it. It was Iowa, Nevada, which included like 3 delays. It lasted like 6 hours and ended at 2 a.m. because of rain. we left early, so. Uh, if this game is I'm going to be in West Lafayette for the game on Saturday. If it gets rained out, I mean, it can't get rained out. I mean, this is an early game. It will continue, but I'm going to be having a poncho this time because I don't want to repeat.
Well, Purdue.
Have there been weird weather games at Ross-Ade in the past that you can remember?
Oh yeah, Purdue. We all joke about it. Purdue. Ever since Jeff Brom has come here, we've had one really bad weather game a year, and we lose it. Lost to Eastern Michigan, Minnesota last year, and we're talking like monsoons. Purdue's offense obviously is not built for rain. So, although I will say we just checked the projections a little bit ago, and it looks like it's maybe going to be done raining in the morning. So that might be a good sign. But if it does rain, advantage Hawkeyes. In my opinion, although we do have a little bit of a running game now to maybe even the odds a little bit. But
can you give us because we of course had you on the show with Mark yesterday on our Iowa, the Voice of College Football channel. Can you give the Iowa fans out there an idea of who this Maccabee kid is and just, I mean, where did he come from?
So Devin Maccabee, he is a redshirt freshman walk-on, actually originally committed to Navy from Southern Indiana, kind of in no man's land, where he apparently tore it up in high school, like video game numbers, but nobody really recruited him. Committed to Navy. Purdue got on him like a week, I want to say, before signing day, and got him to walk on. And he's kind of one of those guys too, people were talking about him on the message board and stuff like that, and kind of one of those, the backup quarterback, if you will, everybody talks about, but how good is he really? Then he got hurt for the spring game, so he didn't play in the spring game. Apparently, he had a really good spring, but then we were not able to watch him, in the spring. So again, the legend kind of grows, and then from the defense, we're even saying that this guy's good. He's he's hard to tackle, and then we see him in a game, and it's like he just he passes the eye test. Like, wait a minute, this guy can actually cut and shift, unlike any other running back we have. And due to injuries to King Daru and Dylan Downing, he was kind of forced into it, and a star was born. Some guys are gamers, and he's one of them.
So what is the status on Daru?
Daru apparently is out. He apparently is not going to play. He's got a calf issue that he injured against Penn State, and he's I think played in like a game and a half since then, and he's not going to play, I guess, this weekend.
And O'Connell is healthy. I know he's dealt with some issues this year.
O'Connell had a pretty serious rib injury. That kind of forgot about a little bit because he has gotten a little bit better, but that bye week was much needed. So I think that was 5 weeks ago, I want to say. So he's probably pretty close to fully healthy.
And he struggled last week. I mean, you play Wisconsin, or 2 weeks ago, you play Wisconsin. It's going to be a physical game. Did he take a bit of a beating? Was the Purdue? You alluded the offensive line maybe going through some struggles last week. Did he get beat up on a bit more?
Actually, not really as much. The offensive line did okay. It's just he made some really bad decisions. Wisconsin's got that defense where they kind of just force Aiden to make some reads, and he just has not figured it out. Unlike the Hawkeyes, he hasn't got that one under his belt yet.
So I got to ask you this: where is this game won? I mean, I just said to our previous caller that big plays are always a storyline because Brom obviously knows how to scheme against big plays. I thought it was interesting. An Iowa media member brought up how this is the second straight year that the Big Ten has placed this game after a Purdue bye week. Whether or not that's intentional because of the dynamic with Brom and Kirk, I don't know. It does make for better television, I think, because there is something weird about Phil Parker, who I believe is the best defensive coordinator maybe in the country, definitely in the Big Ten Conference, in my opinion, him being kind of stumped year after year against this offense that sometimes isn't effective against. Well, I mean, you're not going to run away from that, Grant, that there are times where the Purdue offense isn't that great. Over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, but it seems like every year against Iowa, they show out, especially through the air. And Iowa's predicated on stopping those big plays, keeping receivers in front of them. but Braum finds a way to call the right play. And I think he's a magician as it relates to a passing offense in general. But where is this game won on Saturday?
Well, we kind of talked about it yesterday, and again, I had to kind of get off early, so that's why I wanted to jump on again tonight. But honestly, this game's won for Iowa's perspective, if you guys can take advantage of Purdue's just mangled secondary. There's some serious. I kind of sent you a message on Twitter. There's some serious issues back there, not just with health, but some drama going on. I won't get into it, but Petrus has to take advantage of the secondary. I mean, it's in shambles, to be quite frank. And luckily, we're playing Iowa and not another, a prolific passing team, because there's some issues there. But for Purdue, for some reason, we have figured out Phil Parker, but we're missing a deep threat this year, unlike the years past. You mentioned a couple guys, Terry Wright, Burner, Anthony Mahungu. Even last year we had Milton Wright, who is sorely missed this year. Charlie Jones is a decent deep threat. He's more of obviously a possession receiver. We don't have a burner on this team, so what I'm a little worried about is, typically we've been able to ding and duck on you guys and then attack, find a deep ball play and just do it over and over and over again. We don't really have the guy outside of Jones to do that this year. So how will that change things? That's what I'm looking forward to see too. Who knows though? We might have a guy come out of nowhere. A guy that actually I think will have a big game is been a little disappointing this year, but I think he's going to be ready. I don't think Brock Thompson is going to play, but I think Tyrone Tracy actually is going to be the one more motivated than Charlie Jones. And I think Tyrone is my X factor to having a decent game.
It's a good thought. And Tyrone, of course, has not been, I don't even know how many yards he's got this year.
188.
That's probably about where he was last year at Iowa, maybe a little bit more. I mean, he had opportunity early last year, and I thought he struggled with drops. Games I've watched, he's dropped some passes this year.
Yeah. He's dropped a few. He's had some big catches, but he's dropped probably 2 or 3.
So, yeah, there's no question. He's the guy that nobody's talking about. And let's not forget, heading into last year, Tyrone Tracy was perceived by some to be one of the best receivers in the Big Ten. I don't know that I ever said that, but I remember he making that claim that, hey, I want to be the best. I want to be viewed as the best receiver in the Big Ten when it's all said and done. And, boy, at the end of the year, he wasn't even playing. So I think Iowa fans perceive his storyline totally differently than Charlie's. Now, I'm not one of the fans, Grant, that goes out on a limb and says, "Oh, Charlie did Iowa dirty by leaving in May or in June." And I don't understand fans that make that claim, because how do you blame a kid who gives the coaching staff the benefit of the doubt to make some changes? You lose your QB's coach. You can say, well, it's not his position coach. Well, it's his quarterback's position coach. And what does Kirk do in the spring? He promotes Brian. Charlie gives the situation a shot, and that's how I perceived it anyways. He gives the situation a shot, didn't like what he saw, understood, I'm sure, Tyrone Tracy. Look, anybody who wants to say there wasn't tampering going on, what's tampering nowadays? I mean, there's no question Purdue contacted Charlie Jones before he was in the portal. I mean, I don't think there's any. Would you argue that, Grant?
No, so apparently, from what I've heard, it was actually Aiden O'Connell was the one guilty here. That actually, I don't know if he was in the portal yet or not, but actually, Aiden O'Connell actually went to Jeff Braum and actually had to convince Jeff Braum to take him. So that I don't know if that's been widely reported, but
if that's the case, and Tyrone Tracy was at the Iowa spring game, so like Tracy and Jones are friends as well. So yeah. My point is, that's just how football is operated now. It's not technically tampering. It happens all the time. So Iowa fans are sour about it. But again, I just don't blame. I never have blamed Charlie Jones for making that decision. And
how could you?
Yeah, I don't think you can. But yeah, the Tyrone Tracy storyline is going to be fascinating, and it just seems like this would be a perfect opportunity for him to have a career game. Maybe he won't, but he's home. He's playing in his hometown, basically his hometown, right? His home state. It's against his former team. Nobody's talking about him. And I wish the best for Charlie and Tyrone. It's frustrating, the dynamic with, again, the fans and how they view guys who leave the program. But those guys were nothing but class acts while they were here. And, I know fans, there were some rumors in the offseason. I don't know if you heard this, but there were rumors in the offseason that I don't know if it was Brom or someone on that Purdue coaching staff. After the Charlie Jones incident, there were some things said about the Iowa coaching staff from Purdue's coaching staff. There was also a rumor that Iowa had a wide receiver on campus for an official visit, and there was a Purdue coach that was lighting up this kid's phone while he was on campus on this visit, and somehow that made its rounds on the message boards and
who ended up committing to Purdue.
Who ended up committing to?
Well, could you blame that kid though too? He's a wide receiver. It's like what?
No, I don't blame the kid for Dewey. I don't blame the kid for.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, there's some bad blood.
Fans, Grant, look at that and say, well, why the heck does Purdue need to kind of play? I don't want to say play dirty, but you've already got every advantage in the books. Obviously, a wide receiver should want to play there. Why do you got to bug him while he's on the Iowa visit? I get that side of it, and I don't know if you heard that rumor as well, but that was out there.
Oh, it's more than the rumor. It happened.
Yeah. So
it happened.
There's now, I will say that I'll give Kirk Ferentz credit in his press conference yesterday. He was more than gracious. I thought he was very complimentary of Coach Brom, as he should be. There's no reason to be giving them bulletin board material. I think he acknowledged that, hey, he's been a thorn in our side, and he understands the passing offense.
Corey, what is? I've been thinking about this though. What does that tell you on the offensive coaching staff for Iowa that they did such a terrible job evaluating Charlie Jones? I mean, I looked at it. I was on your show with Mark Rogers, and I looked at his film, and we just, got him. And I came on, and I predicted Charlie Jones, just based off the film and his route running ability, would have 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. And I thought that at the time was probably outrageous. And he's already beat that. Like, he's at 848 and 9 touchdowns. But it's like, how, you guys are saying, or not you, some of the fans, he was the third, fourth receiver. How in God's green earth was he ever third or fourth on that depth chart? I mean, he's insanely, his hands are insane. He's a crazy good route runner. I mean, you look at his film, there's a reason he gets open. I mean, he can get separation.
Now, we'll say this. I think there's, just like, the question was brought up to me, was the Northwestern Iowa game an indication of an improved offense, or was it smoke and mirrors, so to speak? And I think it's probably somewhere in between. And I'd say the same thing about Charlie Jones. So we're talking one extreme to the other, Grant. We're talking about an Iowa offense that's got maybe the worst passing offense in the country, and a Purdue offense that's widely known to be one of the best passing offenses in the country. So I think Charlie's probably somewhere in between. My point being is, I do believe that if Arlen Bruce were playing in the Purdue offense, if Keegan Johnson were playing in the Purdue offense, maybe even Nico Reganey. I don't know what Reganey would do in the Purdue offense, but I'm saying I think there are a number of guys that would be their numbers would be inflated. I don't know that they'd be Charlie Jones.
They'd be better. But I mean, even Tyrone Tracy, he's doing a little bit better than he was at Iowa. But just Charlie Jones has done it against some good corners. Heck, he did the first game. He went up against, Porter Jr. and he kind of tore him up.
You're absolutely I'm not downplaying.
But saying all that, it would help if you have a quarterback that actually could throw people that are.
You don't have a quarterback. You don't have a quarterback's coach. You don't have a system that's effective. You don't have an offensive line that can protect the quarterback, and you don't have receivers that I believe are taught very well, because there aren't typically receivers getting separate. Receivers aren't getting consistent separation, and then I don't think play calling. Obviously, play calling hasn't been good under Brian. So combination of all those things just makes for a bad recipe. But I do believe, I'll say this, right. I do believe, and I've been saying this for months, Charlie Jones was Iowa's best receiver in the spring, probably was last year as well. I'm not implying that Keegan and Arlen would do what Charlie's doing at Purdue, but it is a combination of factors.
Yeah, I think you're right. Again, it would help if you have a quarterback that could be accurate.
Yeah, Aiden O'Connell would be nice in the Iowa system.
Well, Jack Plummer would have been nice.
Wouldn't be nice for Aiden O'Connell. It would be nice for Iowa fans.
Yep.
Well, anything else?
I appreciate you having me on. Well, I was just going to say, like I said, I think this is a sneaky game. Obviously, this Purdue-Illinois game is huge. Technically, Purdue could actually lose to Iowa and beat Illinois. And as long as Illinois gets beat by Michigan, they could still go to the West, the Indy somehow. But hopefully they're not looking ahead of that game. But again, if the weather doesn't cooperate, and I said this on your show yesterday with Mark, that if Petrus can be semi-competent, which, as you said, is a very hard thing sometimes, and he's done it like once, this could be a pretty, I think, close game.
Final question, Grant. Will Purdue put consistent pressure on Spencer Petras? Will they consistently get to the quarterback?
They have to if they want to win this game. But honestly, I think it's a coin flip. I really do.
So you're not confident in the ability of Purdue to pass rush in this game?
Nope. We haven't really done it a whole lot all year. We've been okay. And again, until I see it against Iowa's offensive line, I'm trying to remember last year if we had quite a bit of pressure against you guys. I think we did decent pressure. Of course, we had
you get a guy named Karloftis who lived in the nightmares of Petras and
and then our best pass rusher still might not play in Jenkins. So I think that's going to be obviously, as you alluded to, that's going to be the key to the game. Can we pressure and make Petras uncomfortable? So 50-50 right now.
Grant Michael of the Big Time Boiler, check his stuff out on YouTube. Grant, appreciate the time, sir, and this should be a fun one. Rain, I mean, if it rains, maybe advantage Iowa. Purdue's got more pressure to win this game, no question about it. But boy, it would just be I'll say this: the last Iowa Purdue game I was at the one in 2019. The previous one I was at was in 2015, and if you recall, Iowa secured the West in 2015 by means of a win over Purdue. And the night before, we had a blizzard. We got like a foot of snow. And I remember standing in the bleachers in a foot of snow with, hand warmers and shoved in my socks. And it was a miserable game. So elements were a factor. And that was one of the last times Iowa won. They won in 19, but they have not. They lost 17, 18, 20, 21. They've lost, 4 of the last 5. So should be a fun one in West Lafayette, Grant.
Yeah, enjoy it. Should be a pretty fired up crowd.
All right, thank you, sir. Take care, and we'll chat soon.
Yep, we'll see you.
Grant Michael of the Big Time Boiler joining us. Appreciate him giving us a ring. And if you missed our show with Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, you can check it out on our Iowa at the Voice of College Football channel. We've got some calls lined up. Our phone line is open. So we've got calls lined up here on StreamYard. Our phone line is open for the time being. Certainly give us a call. And we'll get you through. Let's get to Austin, who's been on hold. Austin, welcome back to the show, sir.
Howdy. Hope you had a good Halloween weekend.
I enjoyed the unseasonably warm weather. I've been enjoying the unseasonably warm weather. I'm going to enjoy it more tomorrow. I'm going to get a round of golf in before this trip to West Lafayette. And hey, 70s in November. I'm never going to argue with that.
Oh yeah, I actually ended up watching the Northwestern game on my phone while my wife was driving us up to your neck of the woods. We were going to the Haunted Scream Forest in Des Moines. So okay. I had to watch all that from my phone.
Well, appreciate you getting back with us this evening.
Oh, yeah. Just wanted to briefly, as far as our defense versus Purdue goes, the weird thing is not that Purdue is able to figure out our defense. We actually have a quote unquote simple defense that we run. Everything stays ahead of us. That's generally the concept of our defense. We open up, we welcome the other team to try to dink and dunk and take the short and just march it up the field. That's what we welcome them to do, but we tend to stop those giant plays. The fantastic thing about Purdue, or that Purdue manages to do, is they're the only team that can somehow just make those big plays happen versus our defense. That's the crazy part. And I would like to say I have confidence that Parker will be able to figure that out this year.
I would like to think so, and I have a lot of trust in Phil Parker. Austin, you know that. Here's what I will say. Think about this, folks. Purdue has gone into the Iowa game these last 2 seasons. The game has been preceded by a Purdue bye week. Okay, Go back another year, Austin. Go back to 2020. What preceded the Iowa Purdue game in 2020? Do you remember without looking it up?
No, I do not.
It was the season opener. So Purdue has had extra time to game plan for Iowa every year. Now, Iowa had the extra time in 2020 as well, but with Braum and what he does, that has been a recipe for disaster over the past 3 years. Remember, in 2019, Iowa actually won that game in Ankeny. Yes, Iowa lost in 16 and 17, but we're talking 2 straight wins that were preceded by extended breaks for the Boilermakers, and now we have another game in 2022 with kind of the same setup.
I did not notice that. That's an interesting concept that they're Well, and coincidences do happen. I guess, as you said before, could very well be a good TV ploy to make that happen.
Could be. TV. I mean, look, whatever is good for the brand, right? And
yeah, absolutely.
there is something unique. I mean, from the outsider's perspective, I know Iowa fans don't like it, but there is something unique about seeing who I believe to be the best defensive coordinator in the conference struggle to go. I mean, maybe going up against the best offensive play caller in the conference. I mean, I have a ton of respect for Braum, and I'm sure Phil Parker does as well. That is one question I regret not asking Phil at Media Day, and I should have, and I don't know why I whiffed on that. But this matchup specifically has been such a thorn in his side, and I have to think he spent some extra time in the offseason game planning for this one.
Mm-hmm. I would love to hope so, with their history there. The big thing that I wanted to call and talk about, though, last week there was a caller that mentioned that 5 of our games were versus top 10 defenses. I don't recall which teams were which, but that phone call last week. And to that, I was thinking, okay, hey, that is a valid point. I wonder if our offenses, we should be giving them more credit for going up against these top defenses. So I went ahead and looked up stat lines for average yards allowed and average points allowed for all of the teams that we went up against. Of those, if you'd like, I can just read through a whole bunch of stats, or I can give you the kind of the spark notes of it.
Yeah, let's do the spark notes.
Okay.
We'll go back to high school.
So real quick, there was only one team that we scored more than the average points, and we got more than the average yards against that team. Would you care to take a guess to which one?
Are you talking about up until now?
For this year, up until now, there's only one team that we were above average in both points scored and yards.
I would assume that's Northwestern.
Michigan. Michigan averages 11 points scored on them per game. We had 14. They also only averaged 250 yards on them, and we had 281.
Okay, and again, a lot of those yards were
in that trash time.
But Austin, you're saying that how many yards was Northwestern giving up heading into the game last week?
Northwestern, we were actually underneath their average. Northwestern was averaging 406 yards on them per game, and we came out at 393. Okay. We did beat their points, and that we barely missed that mark, but we did beat their points allowed. They averaged 28 points. We got 33. But Michigan is the only team that we went over their average yardage. We topped average points in the Rutgers game. They averaged 22.5, and we hit 27 in points. Michigan, as I said, was 11 and 14, and then Northwestern averaged 28, and we got 33. With exception to those 3 games, we were under the average yards and under the average score in every single game. So as far as I was really, really hoping it wouldn't be this way when I looked into it, but we have been underperforming against every team with those 3 exceptions, and both of what I would consider anyway the biggest 2 stats to look into. I can't think of any other offensive stat that's important other than yards and points.
Well, red zone efficiency is an important one, but you're right. As it relates to just purely the efficiency of your offense, those are great and good numbers. I'll say this, Grant Michael, big time boiler, who is just with us, does not have confidence in the pass rush on Petrus. That was, if you go back to the Michigan game, probably I'd say the Michigan game and the, maybe Rutgers, but I honestly, thinking back, Michigan, regardless of circumstances, and Northwestern, pass protection was the best it's been for the most part. I know that there were stretches of the Michigan game that were ugly. There was one series where Petrus basically got hit 3 or 4 straight times.
4 in a row.
Yeah, but my point is he is totally dependent on almost perfect protection. And when that pocket condenses and he's forced to make a split-second decision he's forced to make a decision to where he doesn't set his feet and doesn't transfer his way to that front foot. It seems like that's what it comes down to more often than not. He doesn't make the makeables. And so I still think, even though we've talked about big plays and Charlie Jones and Tyrone Tracy, I still think it comes down to, will the offensive line give Petrus time to throw? I'm not going to say, well, can Petrus make throws under duress? He's proven he can't do that, and that's not going to change 2.5 years into his career. Can the offensive line do what they did last week? And I don't believe that they will, but maybe they will. Maybe they have made a jump.
I would love to hope so. On the flip side of stat line, statistically, our best was, shockingly enough, against Michigan. Our worst game, if we compare our totals to their average, was against Iowa State, where they average having 16.6 points scored on them. We only hit 7, and they average 295 yards put down on them, and we were only able to get up to 150. So 145 yards less than the average on Iowa State, which I felt interesting.
For the record, that is a good Iowa State defense. I mean, the caller who made that point, he is right. Ohio State's got a really good defense. Michigan has a really good defense. Iowa State has a really good defense. Illinois has a really good defense. I'm not sold on Rutgers, but they have played good defenses. But the numbers you just brought up are also valid.
And then just as a point, because this is something I was saying since the beginning, our win versus South Dakota, again, they only have 260 yards put on them per game. We only hit 160. But they are still an undefeated team with our exception. It would not shock me, and I did pay a little bit of attention. I think they only had one game that was played anywhere near close. The rest were at least a 2-point difference, or a 14-point difference, or 2-score difference.
Yeah.
So I do not count that as just a gimme game, I don't believe, but that some people were making it out to be in the beginning of the year.
No, it was not.
Okay, so those are the stats that I wanted. I was trying to pull up a graph, or like make up a graph to send you. It's that's just too much effort, and I don't know how I'd send it to you.
Man, if you're willing to make a graph for this show, I may have to hire you on, Austin.
Sure. I don't do basketball though.
Oh well then.
Yep, sorry. It's all gone there.
All right. I appreciate the call. Austin, anything else?
No, that was it from me.
All right. Well, we'll see this weekend if those numbers change. This is a top 50 defense they're playing, albeit not to the level of some of those teams we just mentioned. But I appreciate the phone call, sir.
Absolutely. You have a good night.
You as well. All right. Rolling along here. We've got James, Clay, and Vincent who are on hold. And surprisingly, our phone line is still open. So we're still welcome to take phone calls through our phone line, 515-635-1601. Reminder before we get to James, who is up next, if you are interested in sponsoring any of our post-game coverage or any of the coverage we provide you right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm, you can reach out to me from the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. That's from the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. You can also support the show by becoming a premium subscriber. So do that by hitting the join button next to the channel name here on YouTube. If you're watching the show by means of an iPhone, you may have to log in on your desktop, or at least on the desktop version on your browser. Excuse me. And that would certainly help, and you get a few perks to go along with that subscription. So thank you to everybody that's become a premium subscriber, including the guy we're welcoming to the show now. James, welcome back to the show, sir.
Good. How are you doing today?
I am doing all right.
That's always good. I was getting a little bored with your talk with Mark with food, but I was listening to it the whole thing. So, I stayed the whole time, so I can't.
Well, I know we lost like 30 viewers during that time period. So
I wasn't
I'm
wondering.
going to say this real quick. I appreciate everybody being here. We got about 100 people on right now. The numbers are way down. So I hope that means Iowa fans. I hope that doesn't mean Iowa fans are checking out. But certainly, anybody who wants to share this show on Facebook, on Twitter, if you remember a Facebook group that you think would appreciate it, or you got friends or family, please share the show out on social media because, of course, this show primarily lives off viewership. So please do that. But sorry to interrupt you, James. Go ahead.
Did you see? And I know walk-ons aren't that big, but did you see the walk-on today? Jalen Thompson.
Yeah, a couple solid walk-ons these last.
Watts too. Watts is really good. I've seen him play at my old high school. He looks really good. Like from what I see from like him playing on the field at least. But is Watts playing safety then, or is he gonna play linebacker? Do you know what he's gonna play? I know Jalen Thompson's playing tight end. I know that was announced.
Yeah, I don't know. My guess is, they've got these two classes ahead, and I don't know as much about Watts either. You know more than I do at this point. I haven't even watched tape yet, but you look at the classes in 22 and especially 23. I was going to say 23 and 24, but especially 23. They got a lot of kids in the state of Iowa, and a lot of kids I think they believe they can be flexible with and move around. So, I can't even say one way or the other. If he's going to be a DB, if he can.
Watts reminds me of like a good like safety / like Cash when I watch him play at least. I've seen
Vincent in our chat's convinced that he's coming in as a safety, so
he needs to get size. Yeah, he just needs a little bit more size, but he's a good safety Cash guy. He's quick too. But I don't know if you've seen those two, and then obviously, have you done the video on the D tackle from the JUCO one yet?
I haven't. I will be doing that here. It's been a busy few days, but we'll be getting around to that. So yeah, no, I have watched tape on him, and he's got a good burst. He's. I don't know that I could compare him to Noah Shannon. I think he appears to have a better burst than Noah, but when you're talking about a nose tackle, I don't know that burst is what you necessarily need. But it's good to have guys inside that can get to the quarterback. But and how will his game translate? Obviously, going from Iowa Western to Iowa will be a jump. But yeah,
but, you can't. Whenever I think JUCO, the first guy that comes to my mind, especially at that position, is Davion. Obviously, I know Davion was going to be like he was going to come straight, but then the grade issue, But like when I think JUCO to the Iowa, that's the first guy I think of, Davion Nixon, just because.
And that's a good comparison because he not only was he a space filler, if you will, but Davion Nixon did have burst and could get to the quarterback. That's a good comparison. If this Thompson kid becomes anything close to what Davion Nixon was, then that's a huge get for Iowa.
Yeah, especially I remember the whole time when Davion got like the Alabama offer, like right when he was in JUCO, and everybody was like freaking out about like, oh, he's gonna leave us, because I don't know who wouldn't at that point other than Caden Proctor, but I mean I'll take him though. I'm not complaining for sure, but. But this week, one thing I want to kind of see from me at least, and I know this is for you too, is like just how does Petrus respond? Because like obviously coming off a good game, he hasn't really had a good game, and I'm not saying it's a good game, but like for him, it's a better game than what he's had all year. You know what I'm saying? It's like how does he respond against a better defense?
Well, better defense, and again, a defense that regardless of what the secondary looks like. Petrus is not going to have the time that he had on Saturday. That's just a given. He is not going to have all day to throw like he did against Northwestern because the numbers say that Northwestern is one of, if not the worst defenses collectively in the conference. And probably the worst team in the conference, right? I mean, I think Rutgers is better. I think Nebraska's better. I think Maryland's far and away better. So I think that's the biggest storyline is how much time does he have? Because has he proven to you, James, that he can make throws under duress?
No, he hasn't. He's never has since 2020. I've never thought he really could.
Yeah.
But 2020 offensive line looked a little better, so you can't like compare that. But like last year, for sure, he definitely didn't.
Yeah, you're right.
Getting to the end of the year, at least definitely the offensive line looked better in 2020 than they like obviously at the beginning when we lost to Purdue. Another thing too, we talked about this earlier with the Mahungu effect. Like for me, it's like you never know who's gonna kill us. Like you think it's Charlie, you think it's gonna be Tracy, then it could be the third guy, it could be the fourth guy. Like you just don't know who's gonna be, but you always have to be wary of somebody killing you because that's what's happened.
And what's funny about it, James, is I brought this up to Mark yesterday on our show as well. Regardless of the struggles, it's just hilarious to me because who's the best receiver to have come from Purdue over the last 6 years?
Rondell, and I thought Rondell was going to kill us the 1 year that was Mahungu, but I think that's because the way he played that was because he sold out on Rondell.
Well, he was also hurt. He was also hurt in 2020.
Did he play one game? He played one of the games, didn't he? Though I think you played a game where somebody killed us, but I think they sold out. They sold out on him so somebody else killed us.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. Did he play in 19? He may have played in 19. That was the year. No, it was 18 that he killed Ohio State.
He
But
played
you're
19. I don't think he played I don't think he got that much because I think they like doubled him. Like had a safety over top and always made sure had somebody over top. So then, in that case, somebody else is going to kill you because you're taking one of the safeties out of the play because you're trying to double Rondell Morris, and somebody else is going to hurt you. And that factor of things, but like it just always seems to happen. Like last year, I was like had a good, good feeling about the game. I was like, oh, I'm feeling pretty good, and then David Bell just starts going off, and you're just like, I don't know what to do because it's like you don't see this from any, and you've said this earlier, you don't see this from any other team against us. Like this consistent of like one position group killing us.
Well,
like,
yeah, I mean Wisconsin pretty much runs at will. I mean, most years against Iowa. I mean, that's one thing that Iowa hasn't been able to figure out. I get it. It's not quite as unique maybe because we're just used to it. But yeah, Purdue passes at will against seems like they pass at will against Iowa. But Wisconsin, for the most part, Iowa has not been able to stop Wisconsin's run. They kind of did in 2020, but throw that year out. They've not been able to stop Wisconsin's run since probably 2015. I don't know that they ran for a ton of yards in 15, but I mean, I'm thinking like 2009.
Yeah, I agree on that for sure. But it's even harder, because Braylon Allen's like a tank. That dude is giant. So it's kind of hard to, bring down running backs when you have running backs like that. But what's your thought on these? Like, obviously, I don't want to look forward either, but like, what's your thought on these next 4 games? Like, obviously for you, like you said, there's a better chance to lose them all than there is to win them all. I think if you're an Iowa fan that understands Iowa, you realize that.
Well, I mean, is it possible they could win all of them? Sure. I mean, in Purdue, are they beatable on the road? Yeah. I mean, Grant brought that up. They got a depleted secondary. I mean, this team has they were, I know Aiden O'Connell was down in that. Was it Aiden O'Connell? Yeah, O'Connell was out in that game, but heck, they almost lost to FAU. So this is a team that has not shown up at times. They lost to Syracuse, lost to Penn State. This is a team that can be beat. They're not Ohio State. Wisconsin's down, although they've looked better in recent weeks. They beat Purdue last week, but that's a winnable game. It's in Kinnick. Minnesota on the road is going to be tough. It's in Minneapolis. Are they going to be in a position to be playing for a division title? They need some help. But again, those are all difficult games, but none of them are unbeatable opponents. And certainly Iowa should be favored against Nebraska. Doesn't mean they won't. Or doesn't mean they will beat Nebraska, but no, they're all winnable. I just don't. I don't see them winning all of them. There's too much with Wisconsin's ability to get in the backfield. With how Minnesota plays, I know Iowa's had their number, but if Ibrahim is healthy, my fear moving forward, James, is that this defense, as great as it has been, we have seen in games such as the Ohio State game, and even the Michigan game at times. Although the Iowa State game, they actually stopped the run well. And when you just continue to get beaten down by your turnovers on the offensive side of things, you're eventually going to break. I'm just afraid that as the season goes on, the defense begins to wear down, and you might have some beat up guys because they've been pretty healthy up front. But boy, you don't want to be depleted in your front 7. It's good they have depth, but you don't want to be dealing with a ton of injuries to your best players in your front 7 going up against Braylon Allen at Wisconsin, Mo Ibrahim at Minnesota.
Yeah, for sure. I get that. To me, like I'm actually I want them to win out. They do have a chance to win out, but like it just seems like this year when we're not playing in Nevada or Northwestern, that like 10 points, not even 10, like 7's kind of insurmountable if the defense doesn't get anything going. Like with like a turnover. So you know what I'm saying? Like 7 kind of seems insurmountable just because like this offense can't really do much. So then like,
well, I mean. They've had how many 2 or 3 games now where the defense has outscored the offense. So I mean, there literally have been games where the defense has won. I mean, didn't they beat Rutgers 27 to 10? Am I correct in saying that? 27 to 10, and the defense scored 14.
Yeah,
so
they scored half of that.
So the defense single-handedly beat Rutgers. We've talked about the South Dakota State game. That game was basically single-handedly won by the Iowa defense. So, I mean, look, they wouldn't have even. I mean, Iowa State wouldn't even had the ball with a chance to score that touchdown early in that game to get to 7, which they ended up with 7. Had it not been for a block punt by Lucas Van Ness. So yeah, all those things. This defense is weird in that good, and that it somehow can win games single-handedly over and over and over again. But again, as time goes on, guys wear down, and this is as bad of an offense as this defense has had to deal with. So we'll see. They don't have, knock on wood, there's no Chris Doyle strength and conditioning room, and I think that's a factor as well. How much of this is sustainable with the offense causing issues, if you will.
Couple more things I got. I just got a couple more things, but the defensive line, they sub out a lot more guys, so maybe they'll be more fresh, because you do see a lot of different faces in there, so maybe they'll stay more fresh for the rest of the year than obviously the secondary. He doesn't take nobody out of the linebackers. We don't take nobody out because they do sub out a lot of defensive linemen, so those guys might be still a little fresh, which will give them a chance to get to the rushers at least.
And by the way, it's credit to Kelvin Bell and credit to Phil Parker, because there's been such an emphasis placed on being 8 or 9 deep, and they legitimately are 8 or 9 deep. So you're right. If anything's going to overcome that and overcome the problems that this team experiences due to its inept offense, it's the depth that Phil Parker and Kelvin Bell have developed in that front 7, and Seth Wallace at linebacker.
And if the weather does bad, I think that's going to be the most interesting part, is just watching the weather. Because I went to the 119. You were there. I guess you said you were there too. Purdue and Ankeny in 19 when it kind of rained a little bit, and it seemed like that game plan changed a little bit than what you thought Purdue was going to do. And I think they would have beat us if it didn't. It wasn't raining, but it was sprinkling a little bit here and there, and it was enough to affect things at least. So maybe it might change the game plan if it does rain, and that could give us a little bit more of a chance. But like you said earlier, I'd rather not go to a bowl than have to go to Detroit and play in the Quick Lane Bowl or whatever. I'll pass on that for sure. I'm not trying to watch no Quick Lane Bowl. I'd rather not make a bowl and know a change is going to come than go to Quick Lane Bowl and maybe change doesn't come.
What if I'm not saying we're going to do this, but what if they go to the Quick Lane Bowl and from the Hawkeye of the Storm gives away tickets? Will you enter that contest?
I've never been to Detroit, but I tried. But I might have to watch out where I'm going because I heard it's pretty dangerous up there. But obviously, I've never been to an Iowa Bowl game, so for me, that could be my only opportunity of my lifetime. So I would obviously try to take the chance if that makes sense, because you don't know if you ever get a chance to watch Iowa play a bowl game ever again in your life, So you got to kind of take those opportunities at least.
By the way, thank you to Shodu Wukin, who informed me that a blocked punt is special teams, not defense. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, true. And one thing for sure, Hawkeye Howard, hope he gets better. I haven't really said much about that, but it's glad to see he's on the phone at least, because he's been around since, longer than me, obviously, but I've been trying to stay steady at least. But
James, real quick before I let you go, how long have you been watching this show?
For at least over a year, because I remember I was around last year during basketball, the whole basketball season last year.
Okay. All right.
So I know at least for sure I've been around for almost over a year, but then obviously to say with my basketball season be around too, I don't catch as many of the basketball ones, but I tune in a lot of times too. I do listen to them, even if I don't listen to anything, I do listen to them.
Yeah.
But
I appreciate that, James.
Yeah, no problem. Enjoy your night, and hopefully we can show some signs. Even if we don't win, at least show some signs of life, show some signs of improvement. Because at least that's the most important too. Obviously, you want to win, but hopefully we can be a little better. And well, make sure you like the show, and I'll try to like the show too. I usually like it all the time. Once you get in here, it's kind of hard to like it when you're in StreamYard sometimes because it doesn't really give you the option. So I gotta go back out,
go over to YouTube, and James, don't forget to share it on social media.
I'll try. All right, enjoy your night.
Thank you, sir. All right, plugging along here, we've got Clay. I'm sorry. I think it's short for Clayton. You can tell me. Clay and Vincent, who are on hold. The real Hayden with the super chat. Thank you, Hayden. Had nothing to do with evaluation, in my opinion. They recruited him from Buffalo. It's simply Kirk Ferentz's unwillingness to change his scheme. It's an interesting comment. I'm not going to say you're right or wrong. You are right about this, Hayden. They did evaluate him effectively in recruiting him here. That's true. However, once he got here, he did not receive the offensive snaps that the guys that we talked about received. Keegan Johnson, Arlen Bruce, and those guys were true freshmen last year. Nico Reganey, Tyrone Tracy at times. So I get what you're saying. They did evaluate him well to get him here, and they deserve credit for that. But then they lost him because they didn't get him on the field enough. And yes, you're right. Scheme is part of this, right? I mean, Purdue is obviously the way they run their offense, way they throw the ball all over the yard. It's more conducive to big numbers for receivers. I get that. But I also believe that he should have been on the field a lot more on offense. No question about it. I don't know where this comment's coming from. Bob Denver, Fran is terrible. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, Bob. Don't shoot the messenger. I like Fran. I mean, I don't have a problem with Fran. But appreciate you being here, Bob. Erica with a super chat. Corey, that's why we need Padilla in there instead of P-Trash. My words, or excuse me, Erica's words, not mine. Erica, appreciate you as always. Thank you for being here and for being a supporter of this show. Premium subscriber, super chatter. You're awesome. Thank you. All right, let's add Clay to the mix. Clay, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Corey, how you doing?
Good. Is it short for Clayton?
It is. Only one that calls me Clayton is my mom, so yeah, I prefer Clay.
Well, I'm not going to touch that, so let's stick with Clay.
You got my audio loud and clear?
You're coming in loud and clear.
Good deal. I was thinking a lot actually about Charlie Jones this week, and how he's obviously having a great year with Purdue. And it got me thinking, who do you think in the last 5 to 10 years, do you think we had a receiver that could have been a top 5 college football receiver had he been utilized to his full potential?
Ooh, that's a great question. What's the time period?
Anything in the last 10 years or so. I mean, if you want to go farther back, by all means. But
the last 10 years. Yeah, because if I went further back, I mean, I thought DJK was really good here, and as was Marvin McNutt. So I don't know what those guys.
McNutt got utilized to almost his full potential, but
they had an offensive mind who was coaching quarterbacks. They had an offensive mind calling plays, even though people had their problems with Ken O'Keefe. He was an offensive mind, and they also had a quarterback that understood the position and understood how to get the ball to his guys and deal with pressure. Anyways, I digress. The question over the last 10 years. So, the first guy that comes to my mind, and so Lisa brings up Ihmir Smith-Marsette. He would have been intriguing in the Purdue system. Now, I do believe Ihmir, hate to say this, Ihmir fans, and I liked Ihmir Smith-Marsette. I do think he had below average hands. That'd be the one thing I'd say about Ihmir. And he is not stuck in the league. I hope he does. I know he's kind of jumped around. He's been with Minnesota and Chicago. I think he's down with Kansas City right now. Brandon Smith is an intriguing one because of his intangibles, the big hands and the height. And boy, he had good hands. He didn't just have big hands. He had good hands.
That's where my head went with Brandon Smith and Tavon Smith.
Yeah, Tavon Smith. So, yeah, that one's an interesting one. Tavon Smith. See, he did not come to my mind. I don't know what he gives. I mean, I don't know what he tested out. If did he combine? I don't even know what he.
I couldn't tell you. I think the last time I saw him, he was in the Canadian League.
He's in the CFL. Yeah, last time I knew he was in the CFL. But no, the guy that I was going to bring up, that I'm going to name drop here, Derek Willies. Go look up. Do you remember Derek Willies, Clay?
I don't.
Go look up Derek Willies. And some people may laugh at that. Anybody who remembers Derek Willies in the chat, please raise your hand. So I believe he was at Iowa in 13, maybe even 14. Transferred down to Texas Tech. And I want to make sure I'm not speaking out of turn here. Let me make sure I'm correct on this before I say something that I regret. Yeah, so he ended up in the league. Okay, now I'm going to grab his Wikipedia here since we're talking about this. So he transfers to Texas Tech. He did make it in the league briefly. He was with the Browns from 18 to 20, and according to this, he's playing with the Tampa Bay Bandits, which is a USFL team. He's only had 3 catches for 61 yards in the league, but he barely saw the field at Iowa. Now, I think he dealt with injuries, but physically, he was an impressive dude. Wide receiver at 6. Right now, he's listed at 6'4", 207. He's a California kid. Played high school ball at Rock Island. So I don't. That one was interesting. I'd have to go back as far as the storyline as to why he left. According to Wikipedia, it just says after sitting out his first year, he had 4 catches for 71 yards and a touchdown at Iowa before he left the team in late October. Transferred to Trinity Valley Community College, where he was a first-team JUCO All-American, and then transferred to Texas Tech, where he caught 36 passes for 592 yards and 5 touchdowns over 2 seasons with the Red Raiders. So, certainly those are not even close to Charlie Jones' numbers, even in one season. But my point is, he had some intangibles that, had he been developed fully, maybe at a more pass-heavy school, who knows? That was the first guy that came to my mind.
So this guy and Brandon Smith and maybe Amir Smith-Marset, if they were in their ideal situations, you think they had all had the talent to be a top 3 college football receiver for their season?
Top 3 in the country?
Yes.
Oh, no, I don't know about that. Maybe I missed that part of the question. No, there probably is nobody that I would. That's a big ask. But I guess I'm just thinking of guys that,
or maybe even top 10.
Yeah, well, guys who would have maybe had the chance to excel at a Purdue, for instance.
Sure.
Only other guy I'd bring up, Clay, is another guy you may not remember, Damon Powell. He was at Iowa, I believe, kind of same time period as Willie's. Had a brief time in the league. I think he got shot in the face. If I'm not mistaken, was with the Cardinals down in Arizona. Got shot in the face. I don't think he ever played football again. He was a speedster, but I don't know. His ability, obviously, there's more involved with playing the receiver position than just speed. But he's a guy that I kind of came to mind as well.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it's just something I've been thinking about all week. Is like,
great
how
question.
many receivers have we wasted? I don't know if wasted is the right word, but not used properly over the years.
Oh, too many to count. Too many to count. Unfortunately.
Another serious question, and if you want to laugh, go ahead.
Okay.
But as far as an offensive coordinator, you take everything out, like recruiting, player development, and you just break it down to just play calling. Do you think anyone put in Brian's shoes this year with, like, say, 10 years of just watching football experience could have done the same job? Just play calling, not like building a relationship with players and developing them and recruiting them, just solely play calling.
You're saying, is there anybody else out there that could have done a better job?
An equivalent job. Just the average fan that's watched football for the last 10 years.
I would like to give Brian the benefit of the doubt that even though me as a talking head who's never played Division I college football, that he obviously knows a lot more about football and about offense than I do, even though I'm sitting here criticizing him at times. So average fan, I would still like to think Brian. There are times, I'll say this, Clay, there are times where I think Brian maybe tricks himself. Maybe he fools himself in a way where he's maybe thinking too much. I've kind of had that thought with play calling over the years. And, it's kind of like the Michigan, I believe it was a Michigan game where Iowa kept running. You remember Iowa kept running draw plays on third down, and they worked like 2 or 3 straight times. And at some point, you've got to break tendency and take a shot on third down. And what does he do? He runs a run play, a draw on third down in the red zone. And of course, Michigan finally said enough is enough. We're going to play the run here, snuffed it out. And it was kind of the deciding factor in the game. Iowa had to run the 4th and 2 play, and Peters throws it into the dirt short of Sam Laporta, who, by the way, didn't even run 2 yards. The play call wasn't even for 2 yards. So there are times where I think Brian's making ridiculously dumb decisions. I'll just admit that. But in general, no, I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt that he still knows more than any of us as average fans.
Yeah, sometimes maybe I think my ego is a little too far ahead of me. Like, wow, I could be doing this job, and I'm not naive enough to think that I could recruit or develop relationships with the players and stuff like that. But I was just talking play calling. It was like, wow, I feel like I could have made that call.
I get you.
I think last show you were asking about some extra content, or like you wanted fans to come up with ideas for more content. Do you gamble with sports at all?
I am not a bettor.
Oh man.
Why, you want me to start dropping gambling content?
A little bit, yeah. I love just putting huge parlays together.
So I'll say this, Clay, and I don't judge anybody who wants to gamble. I will never gamble, never bet on sports, on anything. I've had people say that I'm being self-righteous by saying that. That's not my intent when I say that. Again, everybody make their own decision. I just personally will never do it. And I can say I've had several betting sites, sports betting sites, reach out to me about sponsorship, and I've turned them down. So that's just I just don't want my channel associated with it. However, but again, I that doesn't mean I'm judging you or anybody else for it. I just personally will never be involved in gambling or betting.
Understood. What if I'll just throw one more and then I'll drop it at you. I'll drop it. What if it was just like a units thing? It didn't have anything to do with money. If you just, how some people just do the units and they like say, oh yeah, I'm 50 units up for the season or whatever, and they don't like actually gamble any money.
I'll say this: I love playing poker without money, if that's what you're asking.
Okay.
I don't do it, but I mean, I enjoy the concept of what's a good comparison? Monopoly. Like growing
poker
up,
without money's tough, right? Though, because like, how do you bluff then? There's no threat.
Okay, maybe risk is risk a better comparison? The game Risk.
Yes, I'm familiar with Risk. Yeah.
Any game with dice. So yeah, no, I have fun with those concepts. I just will never bet money on anything.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, I appreciate the question though, Clay. No problem fielding the question.
Alrighty. Sounds good. Yeah, I think that's all I had for today.
Well, I appreciate the call, Clay.
Yep. Till next time.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, good questions from Clay. Enjoy hearing from Clay, and I think he was the guy that asked us our question that was featured in our video earlier today. I think he called in during the postgame show on Monday during the Iowa Truman State postgame show. Let's add Vincent to the mix, who has been active in our private chat. You remember Derek Willies well. Did you like that answer, Vincent?
I was just going to comment on that. I love that answer because, one, the kids from my area played at Rock Island. He actually started at Burlington High School. Pardon me, I'm kind of getting over a cold, but started at Burlington High School, believe it or not, in Iowa. That's where he started his high school career and then ended up transferring. I think he's got either mom or dad working for one of the military services, and ended up in Rock Island. So he ended his high school career playing for Rock Island. And a very good comparison or answer to that question as far as unutilized potential. Just a physical freak. Now, did he go off and have insane numbers elsewhere? But no, I really liked your answer to that question. Another one for me would even be Keenan Davis, a kid that was one of the higher rated receivers we've had come out of the state of Iowa in the past decade. And he had a good career, but I still think underutilized. But yeah, I like the Derek Willies Willies answer.
What about the Damon Powell one? I mean, what do you think about Powell?
In my opinion, we utilized Powell for what his athletic abilities were for. Wasn't a big guy, but certainly a burner.
Yep.
Was he underutilized? No, I thought we utilized his strengths. That's just my take on it. But yeah, you're right. He did suffer a gunshot wound. And I think you're also right too to the face. I worked for the Scott County Sheriff's Department for 7 years. My wife for 10. I was there the night he came in when he got arrested. Yeah, minor misdemeanor. I don't remember what it was. I just remember recognizing him and thought, oh, that's an odd place to be in the Quad Cities and getting arrested. But
Wait a minute. Who got arrested?
Damon Powell.
Why did he get arrested?
You'd have to Google it. It was something insignificant.
So we're off the gunshot wound.
Right. This was, I can't remember if it wasn't related to that, if that's what you're asking.
So it was before or after that?
Yeah, one of the two. I want to say after.
Okay.
I think. Go ahead.
Let's just say he ended up back in Iowa. I didn't realize that.
He was in the Quad Cities for something. I mean, something that got him arrested. You should be able to Google search
Okay. Yeah,
his arrest, and it was just something minor. Not from what I recall. I just remember when he came in, I thought, well, hell, you don't see an Iowa football player or ex-Iowa football player come into county jail. But I mean, you never know what paths these guys take after playing college football. But two things I wanted to, I guess, kind of answer questions or answer to. First, I think it was Grant. He's the gentleman from the Purdue side of things, right?
Yep.
I know he was saying he doesn't feel Purdue is going to get pressure on Petrus. I feel they're going to have no problem. This is what teams are doing with Iowa. Our offense is predicated. It's predictable. Northwestern, the reason we had a lot of success against Northwestern is you didn't see them blitz a whole lot. They rushed with 4, trying to create pressure with 4, even though they didn't need to. So it gave the illusion that our offensive line probably played a little bit better than they had in weeks past, but it's the same offensive line. In my opinion, there's no change. Purdue blitzes far more frequently than a Northwestern would. So in my opinion, we're going to have the same issues that we had weeks prior to playing Northwestern.
If that's the case, then look out.
Right. And that's
the case.
Absolutely look out. We're not going to have the same offensive production. I know he's scared to death of their secondary due to either injuries or personal issues or drama, to quote him, but we're not going to have the chance to do that because Purdue's not going to allow that. They're going to blitz the heck out of us. They know we have a weak O-line. They know we have a statue at quarterback, and they're going to – Brom's not a dummy. He's going to make sure that he schemes well. Even though he's an offensive guy, he's going to make sure that his defense is putting pressure on Petrus because he folds 90% of the time. And just like you said, he's not a pressure quarterback.
Like a paper sack or a
Right.
wet paper sack.
Yep. And secondly, for as great as I always say Norm Parker, but dates there shows my age. As great as Phil Parker is, and as great as the defense is, the reason Purdue has been so successful, it's not really rocket science. Jeff Brom is an offensive-minded guy, and he knows how to, and I'm thinking from an offensive perspective myself, being a play caller. You're going to scheme to where the gaps and the holes are in a zone coverage, and that's what we play. We don't play a man coverage or a bump and run type of defense. We're playing a zone coverage, and there's always holes in the zone, and he knows this. So he schemes very effectively against the Iowa defense. So it's not really a shock every time we play Purdue because he knows how to take advantage of those holes in the zone and get guys to sit in those holes and wait for those. And Purdue's a timing passing offense as well. So again, it's not a shock. It's not rocket science. He's taking what we're giving him, but he's also making sure that he's allowing guys to hit passes in rhythm and on the run. So we don't have a chance to gang tackle or to tackle once they catch a ball. They're still running vis-a-vis David Bell. If he could be, he'd still be running from last year's game. So just to kind of throw that out there to answer those questions.
Vincent, I want to respond to that, and I also want to get your take on a couple of the comments on wide receivers here in the chat. But I have to get a quick break in. Can you hang tight for 60 seconds?
Yes, sir. You got it.
All right, folks. We'll be back with more here during Hawkeye Hangout. We'll take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. Hawkeye fans, let's talk about health and performance optimization for a moment. Our sponsor, Ascent Nutrition, offers amazing products. It's actually owned by former Iowa graduate Lance Shuttler. Now, I've decided to partner with Ascent Nutrition because of their unique approach to human health. Ascent offers an organically grown, mold and mycotoxin-free coffee. It provides a pure, clean, and rich flavor without those pesticides that most coffees are treated with. They also offer an algae oil DHA, which is used to support brain health, memory, and focus, as well as proper nervous system development in adults, children, athletes, and even pets. Now, lastly, their unique crafted wild pine pollen is used to support cardiovascular health, hormonal function, and a healthy libido. Your purchase not only supports this channel, but the business of a former Hawkeye. Visit goascentnutrition.com or click the link in the description below and use the code Hawkeyes. That's the code Hawkeyes to receive 15% off your total order from Ascent Nutrition. You may have heard of the real-life Hawkeye man cave known as Kinnick Under the Kitchen. Well, after lots of hard work, there's not much space left to paint, but the walls are exploding out for public consumption. Under the Kitchen is proud to announce that you can now purchase exclusive prints of some of your favorite Hawkeye legends, including wrestling great Spencer Lee, football players Arlen Bruce, Riley Moss, and Tavian Banks, plus an all-in-one Murray family legacy print featuring Keegan, Chris, and Kenyon Murray himself. Signed and unsigned prints are available, making the perfect collectible or gift for any Hawkeye enthusiast. For more information on purchasing one of these outstanding Hawkeye prints, visit Under the Kitchen on Facebook. That's Under the Kitchen on Facebook. So very much appreciate Under the Kitchen and Ascent Nutrition, both those companies doing great things. Randy Engel, by the way, constantly getting these new deals with these athletes. So if you haven't gotten a print yet, certainly do it. It makes for a great gift, and maybe even a gift to yourself. And by the way, Ascent Nutrition, their coffee is going to be featured on some major networks coming up, including CNN, Fox Business, PBS going to be a part of this as well. So their coffee and their products taking the world by storm right now. Right now, actually, it's scheduled to be featured on Fox Business on November 10th, so in just 8 days. So definitely check out Ascent Nutrition, goascentnutrition.com, and as I mentioned, Under the Kitchen on Facebook. All right, well, we'll throw it back over to Vincent. Vincent, you asked me before the break, or you commented before the break on Purdue's ability to attack Iowa's zone. And it kind of brought me back to the comment we had, or the conversation we had with Grant Michael here a few minutes ago, because he talked about the fact that Purdue doesn't really have a proven burner, and he doesn't consider Charlie Jones to necessarily be that David Bell type burner. But Vincent, you're exactly right about Purdue's ability to nickel and dime you. You go back to the 2020 game, you go to the 2021 game last year. They just nickel and dime Iowa to death. And in 2018, I believe it was 18 is the game in West Lafayette, they hit a lot of deep balls in that game. And I want to say it was maybe DJ Johnson, Riley Moss might have been a part of that game, but he was a young Riley Moss. They got burned over the top a lot more than they should have. Very unorthodox type of a loss. Lost that game at the end. Iowa actually went toe for toe with them offensively, but that's my fear too, Vincent. I believe Purdue has the ability to nickel and dime Iowa to death without ever having to take a shot over the top.
Yep. Yep. And here's what you see. Iowa's extremely successful in their defensive scheme. They've done this ever since Norm Parker's been there. And Kirk asked this of his defensive coordinator, or Norm Parker, when he got there. He said, look, if we minimize big plays and, excuse me, keep the score, it's going to, one, keep the score close, which is going to give us a better opportunity to stay in games, especially when we're at that time in 98, 99, or excuse me, 99, 2000, 2001, where you're trying to create an identity. That was Kirk's request, or his desire in a defensive coordinator was, look, this is what I want. I want to shorten the game by not allowing scoring to get out of hand. If we keep the scoring within reach, it's going to give us a better opportunity, and we're going to have a more success to win games. And that's been the MO ever since Kirk has been there. That'll never change. I kind of went off on a little tangent there, but and Purdue, to their credit, they know how to exploit that, and they've been exploiting it ever since Jeff Brom got there. But what my point is, we've done this for so long. Most offenses, especially like in Michigan, especially like in Ohio State, they know what we run defensively, but they're still going to try to flex their muscle, meaning they don't care. They think that they're that good, and generally they are, that they can go ahead and run their style of offense and break us from what our defensive strategy is. And it allows us to be successful because we take advantage of mistakes, tip balls, receivers running wrong routes. Where Purdue, they're like, no, if you're going to give it to us, we're going to take it and then we're going to exploit it. So that's where you see our defense has been successful, because teams come in saying, well, we don't care that you're going to give us the zone, or you're going to run the zone defense and give us these holes in the zone. We're going to go ahead and try to take shots over the top or down the sideline because we still feel that we can beat you. And they're not as successful as they'd like to be. Where Purdue, exact opposite. Brom is strategic. He's almost surgical in how he prepares his offense against an Iowa defense or any kind of zone defense. And it works every time. But when they play a team that's effective at blitzing and effective at man coverage, bump and run coverage, where they're not letting receivers get off the line free. If you look at our defense, how often do you see us play bump and run where we're trying to reroute receivers? We don't do that. We sit back in coverage, but they have problems executing their offense against defenses that blitz well and that play man coverage well, and use bump and run, because they're rerouting receivers. They're knocking them off their timing. They're knocking them off their routes, and it's successful. It screws up their momentum. It screws up their timing. It screws up their offensive efficiency. So, and Jeff Brom, he knows what we're going to do, and he'll take advantage of it every time.
And in response to Bob's comment here, Purdue nickel and dimed us last year using 2 QBs. Actually, they used 3.
Three.
They used 3, and Aiden
Yep.
O'Connell is by far, he's not even. There have been a number of quarterbacks that have hurt Iowa. If I'm not mistaken, the 2019 game, which Iowa won, but Bell went off in that game. I believe that was Jack Plummer who quarterbacked that game, I believe. And so, caller, I'm going to put you on hold. The caller who just called in. So my point is, it's not just an O'Connell thing. It's not just a David Bell thing. And in 2018, I believe 17 and 18 were both David Blau years.
Right.
Who was the other kid quarterback for them? Started with a Y.
I thought it was Appleby, because then he ended up transferring to Florida. And I could be wrong.
It's not Appleby's not the one that I'm thinking of. Somebody's going to know this. Who's the Purdue quarterback that, like 5 years ago, that was at one time I think he was projected to be a first round draft pick.
Danny Etling.
Oh, I don't think it was Etling either. Who am I thinking of? Am I going crazy here?
I remember Blau, Etling.
Let's see. So I think he was on the same team with Blau. Maybe it wasn't Etling. And I know it wasn't Etling. Somebody's got to know this. Somebody will find it. I thought it started with a Y, but anyways, not important. Sindelar.
Oh, Austin Sindelar. Yep.
Elijah.
Or Elijah. Yep. I'm sorry. Yep.
I don't know why I thought it was a Y. Anyways, not important. But my point is, they've had good skill position players. They've got a really good play caller. They've got a head coach, and the head coach has been awarded extra time over the last 3 years to game plan for this one. So it makes for a fascinating storyline.
Yeah. I don't want to tie up your line too much, because I want to let other callers call in, but I want to make 3 quick comments or points. I know you had touched on, or some of the callers had touched on, hey, what do we think our last 4 games are going to be? Do you think they're wins? Do you think they're losses? I'll just give my take. I think we're going to split them 2-2. Excuse me, split them 2-2. Nebraska, just as defunct as they are, and the way our offensive or how we run our offense, I think we're going to be able to just kind of power through that game. To me, That one's a win. And I also think, as good as Minnesota's played this year, they run a very similar style of offense that we do. Now, they're bigger up front. They execute better up front on the O-line. But we can counter that with our rotation on our D-line. But there's nothing scary with them when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. And Ibrahim's a great back. But I think those are two games that will play to our favor just based off of the offenses that we're playing and how well we play on defense. And then our two iffies are going to be obviously Purdue and Wisconsin, because we've just always struggled with Wisconsin.
Well, we've always struggled with both of those teams. Well, over the last number of years, we've struggled with Purdue and Wisconsin, and Iowa's had the numbers of both Minnesota and Nebraska. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happened.
Yeah, that's just kind of my theory on that. Second thing is, I have no doubt in my mind. I shouldn't say no doubt. I have a very strong feeling that Kirk is going to go in a different direction at the end of the season. I can understand. I don't like how he was talking to the reporter from Ohio or Columbus in answering the questions, but I do understand where he's saying, look, I don't make decisions mid-season. We'll evaluate this at the end of the season and go from there. I get that. I think that's a classier way to do it. But my question is, when that decision's made, because I think Brian's going to go on the NFL. He's going to find something in the NFL, whether it's tight ends, O-line, special, whatever it is, that's where he's going to go. I think he wants out of Iowa City. He's kind of expressed that desire a couple times. But who do we, in your opinion, who do you think we bring in? And the reason I ask that is because I hope it's not Paul Chryst.
Why?
Because Paul, his offense is not dissimilar to what we already run at Iowa.
But Vincent, Kirk is not going to get, and I don't believe Kirk is going to hire a coordinator that doesn't run an offense the way he wants it run. He's just not going to. He is what he is. He is.
No, I agree. I don't disagree.
Get
One
the best
iota.
version. Get the best version of what that is, and the best version of what Kirk wants might be Paul Chryst. He's a former. He was a successful head coach at Wisconsin. He's a former quarterback. I'm not against the idea. I know some people hate that idea, but I'm not against that at this point, because I understand Kirk is not. I don't believe he'll give up his style, his system this late in his tenure. So if that's
right.
it, we might as well get the best of what we're going to get, if that makes sense.
No, you're right. Here's the bottom line is you're right. That's what Kirk's MO is. If he's going to venture out, his splash hire in his mind would be a Paul Chryst, and that's a very good probability. I'd say that. But if you're looking at,
do we know if Paul Chryst would do that? I mean, we don't know that, right?
I think they have a mutual respect for one another.
Oh.
You know,
how do we know Paul Chryst? He made $16 million to quit.
Right.
He doesn't need the work, you know.
Well, he doesn't need the work, but Paul Chryst, he's a football coach. And if you're a football coach, when you're unless you're in the twilight years and you're in your Bobby Bowden age, you're not really ready to wrap it up. But my hope, I agree with you. Kirk doesn't want to change Kirk ball. That's just the reality. It's never been that way since he's been there. But I think his philosophy of this is how we win games or put ourselves in a better position to win games and be competitive is run heavy, safe passes, QB rollouts. I understand that philosophy, but that's the same philosophy that you had when you first got hired. But the game has evolved so much in the past 25 years. You have to evolve with it. And this is the part I've never gotten. He thinks if he has an explosive offense, that it's going to be a detriment to what he does defensively, and he couldn't be any more wrong. And the reason I say that is he thinks if we're on the field scoring within 5 to 6 plays and we get our defense right back out there and they're out there, half of the game, that it's going to be put a lot of pressure on the defense. Well, we're doing that anyway because we're not producing anything offensively. So there's not a darn difference. You might as well get an offense out there that's successful and can move the ball and put points on the board, and you still have a top tier defense. I've just never understood conceptually how he doesn't grasp that. But I know. Go ahead.
You know, Vincent, I just want to just to take the Paul Chryst conversation a step further, and we can drop this.
No, you're good.
What is it that you don't want? What is it about the potential, if that's an actual option, come whatever, January, or if that happens, Brian leaves, they're looking for an offensive coordinator.
Right.
What is it about Paul Chryst besides style that makes you not think that he would be a more than adequate coordinator at Iowa with this system?
That's the only thing. I have
Agreed.
a ton of respect for Paul Chryst as a coach. He did a good job at Pitt before he came back to Wisconsin, but that's the only thing is style. I mean, you have to, and that's why Wisconsin let him go. They understood this offense is going to hinder us in so many different phases with our program. You can't keep losing out on top tier recruits because you don't want to expand your offense. So to answer your question, it's merely just style. We can't trade a Brian Ferentz for somebody who's just as similar in Paul Chryst. And I have a ton of respect for Paul.
Vincent, I'm going to take exception to what you just said, though. Let me just take exception to what you just said, because you put Brian and Paul Chryst in the same
together
conversation about all coaches. I will take Paul Chryst. I will take Paul Chryst over Brian any day of the week, any time of the day. Paul Chryst is wins that conversation hands down. They shouldn't even be in the same conversation. And I'm not. You agree with that, correct?
Yes, over Brian Ferentz. Yes, absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
I probably should have worded that a little bit different. But if you took a poll of Iowa fans, and you asked them this very question, do you want a Paul Chryst or do you want to go out there and go after an offensive coordinator that puts yardage and points on the board? It's not going to be close, in my opinion. They're going to say, look, Paul Chryst did a great job at Wisconsin, but we need to be on the same level. If we want to be competitive as we want to be to go to the college football playoff and possibly beyond, we have to do a better job of getting somebody in here from an offensive standpoint that puts points and yards on the board, and that's it.
I understand what you're saying, and if I thought that was a possibility under Kirk, I'd be promoting it just like you are. Final thing I'll say, the only reason why I believe, again, I want to reestablish that the only reason why I think Paul Chryst would be potentially be a good option, and it's way too early to really have these conversations, but I'm fine with talking about it anyways, is because of the fact that he's probably at this phase in his career, this is potentially a job that he would consider. I think that's possible. I also don't know that to be a fact because he did make a lot of money just to leave Wisconsin. He is good friends with Kirk Ferentz. They do have mutual respect for each other, I believe. He would fit into the culture, the way Iowa wants to operate. And here's the other thing. If Iowa's going to continue to run the same style of offense, which I know you don't believe in, I'm not saying I believe in it, but if I accept the fact that, hey, they're going to run this style, I want the best of that style. Wisconsin's had more than adequate offenses when he's been there. All right. Now, the offense has not been good these last 2 years at Wisconsin, and so that would be a concern. That would be something that would have to be considered in the hiring process. Why is that? But here's one thing fans love to talk about, and fans, including myself, don't know anything about the passing game in comparison to Kirk or even Brian Ferentz. But people talk all the time, well, it's the zone running scheme stuff. Okay, Paul Chryst comes in. Maybe he helps Kirk transition not completely away from the zone blocking stuff, but maybe integrating more gap, right? Integrating more gap schemes into the run game. So that would be potentially a positive from to entertaining the idea of Chryst maybe being the next coordinator here. But I'm not touting that. That's just my train of thought.
No, that's a very good point. You're bringing up a very good point. Would Chryst come in here and improve our our line play and execution and our O-line scheme, absolutely, without a doubt. I have no question in that because he did an excellent job with that at Wisconsin.
He is a former quarterback. I'm not going to say he's an O-line guru. He is a former quarterback, but perhaps he could transition some of those gap concepts, which would help Iowa potentially.
Quarterbacks know what work, or that they know what works when it comes to creating holes for backs as well as quarterbacks themselves. So the other thing I wanted to touch on that I know you touch on it from time to time. I think people they keep undervaluing, or not undervaluing. I don't want to say the elephant in the room, but people don't really want to say, well, it's not really, I don't think it's as big of a reason, or they're not attributing the loss of this person to the woes that we're having, but there's no question the loss of Chris Doyle. And again, I'm not saying we need to bring this guy back by any stretch, but the loss of Chris Doyle, when you look at any player interview that has gone on to the NFL and had stardom in the NFL or just stardom in Iowa, when you ask them, what was it that propelled you to the track that you ended up on? What were some of the key contributors? Every single interview I've seen, I mean, every single one has mentioned the Chris Doyle. Matt Ross, All-American, second-round pick. He talked about one of the reasons he came to Iowa, along with some of the other guys in his recruiting class and many recruits after, was the mere fact of what Chris Doyle can do for you from a strength and conditioning position. And firsthand testimonial. My buddy's little brother played for the Hawkeyes from 2005 to 2010 and was a second round draft pick by the Colts. Pat Anger told me the same thing. Chris Doyle has such a huge impact on that program and the development of the players. If we're going to be that naive to think that losing him hasn't had a much bigger impact than we thought, then we're all fools.
I get what you're saying, Vincent, but you and I can also agree that doesn't mean he wasn't still I want to try to think of the right word to use here.
What happened needed to happen, but
well, I don't know what needed to happen because I'm not there, right? But
yeah,
clearly Chris Doyle I think it's clear that Chris Doyle did not always manifest proper decorum.
Oh yeah.
As a coach, and I understand coaches have to be rah guys and be tough on you, but some of the comments that were allegedly made were completely inappropriate, and in some cases, some people would say they were racist comments, and I'm not going to say one way or the other because I wasn't there, and the context is important, but they were inappropriate, and you and I aren't debating that, Vincent. But
no,
I do agree with you. I think it's a factor, and it's a factor especially with the offensive line.
Yes. That's my
Eric
point.
asked this question: why is our defense still strong? Then because they got a great defensive coordinator, and the offensive line. I don't necessarily think it's a matter of size. You look across Iowa offensive line; most of Iowa's guys are in the 295, 315 range, where you probably want Iowa linemen. They're not small like maybe people thought the 2021 lines were. I think the biggest thing here is Chris Doyle worked with the offensive line specifically.
Right.
He made a concerted, according to reports, right? I've had people tell me that, and that's, I think, basically been considered a fact of the Chris Doyle tenure, that he worked primarily with that offensive line, especially with the offensive line. So I think the defense has just been attributed to Phil Parker and his expertise. But again, Vincent, I'll return to this. 2019 is a good example of Chris Doyle was still here, and they were terrible up front.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can just solely place it on that. They were freaking bad, man.
Right.
We've talked about that 2019 team.
We have.
And they overcame a lot of it. They won 10 games that year because of a guy who, despite pressure, Nate Stanley was a freaking warrior. And yes, the defense was really good. But even not 2019, go back. Iowa doesn't typically have good offensive lines. There's this concept that Iowa typically is dominant up front. When's the last time they've been real dominant up front? Besides 2020, which you can kind of throw out because of the COVID year. When's the last time they've actually been dominant across the board?
I'll tell you when. 2002. When we had
20 years.
I'm just saying, if you want to say from tackle to tackle, you had David
Yeah.
Porter, Andy Lightfoot, Bruce Nelson, Robert Gallery, and then who was our other guard? Oh, Steinbach. So you had, and these are guys that all played in the league. So that to answer that question, 02.
I think I had just, I believe, I could be wrong on this, but I believe in 2002, let me do the math on this. I think I may have been, at that point, I may have dropped the training wheels on my bicycle in 2002. But here's what I'll say, Vincent. You're right about I think you're right about the Chris Doyle thing, but they haven't been good. They haven't been good up front in most years, even with Chris Doyle. So
all I'm saying is that there's just a little factor, but everything else I agree with you on. It's atrocious, the things that were reported. He absolutely needed to be relinquished of his position and asked to resign. I just think if we're looking at, well, how come the offensive, and Eric makes a great point on your message board there. Well, why is the defensive line not struggling then if it's a Chris Doyle thing? I don't have a 100% clear cut answer. I'm just saying that there's a factor there that Chris Doyle's departure leaves. How big, I wouldn't even try to quantify, but there's a factor there. And lastly, just so someone else can get on here, you threw this at me last year at the beginning of the basketball season, and I know you and I had a couple shows about it where we talked about Keegan. You're like, hey, he's a top 10 pick. I'm like, you're nuts. There's no, and here now I'm watching him on my Fire Stick sports app every chance I get. And I just think, how did I miss this? Corey had it right on. How the hell did I miss this?
There were other people that had it on before I did, but yeah, he's unbelievable.
Have you watched him for the Kings? I mean, it's just effortless.
Yeah, he's.
I
remember that conversation when you called in and said,
"Yeah, you're like, you're nuts. You're not." And I'm like, "No." You're like, "No, Vincent, you're nuts. This guy's a top 10 pick." And I'm like, "Corey, you're nuts." And anyway, just wanted to point that out. I greatly love the show. I am looking forward to when you get the opportunity to get some merchandise up. Love to be able to have an opportunity to get that, and really appreciate the time, Corey, and the platform as always. Do a great job, brother.
Appreciate it, sir. I want to respond to the comment here from Richard. He says, I live about 90 miles from Detroit. Viewership is down, and you have been getting some callers and comments countering your negative narrative that you have been singing for 6 months of listening. Richard, I don't know what to say, buddy. I don't speak based on what's going to get me views or what's not going to get me views. I speak on what I see on the football field, on the basketball court. And as I say to everybody, if you don't like it, you don't agree with it, you don't got to listen. I don't really care. I mean, certainly I want people to be here, but I'm not going to be disingenuous and run this channel with a view to being clickbaity and fit the narratives. There's too many people in the media. I'm not just talking about Iowa media, but the media in general, whether we're talking about this type of media or mainstream media, that function based on what people want to hear. I've never been that way, and I've been consistent since day one about Brian Ferentz as offensive coordinator, consistent about the offensive line, everything we're talking about this evening. So, Richard, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. But again, not going to change a narrative. And look, you can say what you want about our viewership here. I think the channel's doing okay. I'd like to go on a limb and say that the fastest growing Iowa channel on YouTube is doing just fine, Richard. Appreciate you being here, by the way, watching. Bob Denver says, Fran hasn't made a Sweet 16. How can you rip on Iowa football but not basketball? We haven't even gotten to basketball, Bob. I had a post-game show Monday. I said it on Monday, Fran's got to get to a Sweet 16. He's got to get to a Sweet 16. There's no question about it. So there's no agenda here. Make that clear. There's no agenda here. Appreciate you being here, Bob. Brian wants me as OC. No, you don't. Good thing it says Brian E, not Brian F. MC, appreciate you becoming a YouTube member, MC. Appreciate the premium subscription. And if you're interested in becoming a premium subscriber like MC, click the little join button down by from the Hawkeye of the Storm here on YouTube. The conversation about a receiver, it was sort of interesting. Had some other comments here. Spaceboy says, didn't Derek Willis die? Not that I'm aware of. I sure hope not. Not that I'm aware of. He also says Colin Sandeman would be in the conversation. He was he played with a stacked group of wide receivers. James brings up Martin Manley, Oliver Martin. You know, he's struggled at Nebraska to gain traction. He's been at 3 Big Ten schools, struggled at each one. Trey Strauss, good wide receiver. Again, played with a stacked group. How about this one? Andy Brodell. Yeah, and he kind of, I think he was with the Raiders, got drafted by the Raiders and had an okay career, but didn't last a real long time in the league. Riley McCarron, I wish he had gotten a better group of receivers around him. I think would have made him better. He should not have been a number 1 receiver in 16 with the injury to James Vandenberg, or excuse me, to Matt Vandenberg. He would have potentially at least been number 2. DJK, Quinn Early, that's going back a lot further than 10 years. Ed Hinkle. Alex says, where do you tailgate at? I am not a tailgater, Alex. I've tailgated before, but I am not a tailgater doing this show, so I can't really be at many of the games. We'll be at the Purdue game on Saturday. Erica says, that sounds good. Anyone tried the Ascent coffee? I have, Erica, and I mean that honestly. I'm not just saying that because they're supporting us. Had a cup of it this morning. It's good iced. It's good hot. It's really good stuff. Definitely get yourself a bag if you haven't tried it. Hawkeye Live, I think Petrus would have been better off at Oregon State because of the offensive line. He needs an offensive line. We've been saying that for a while now. John Buckeye says, I like Kinnick, the great game day experience. Vandenberg, I think you mean Vandenberg, I'm assuming. Or the White Beast that went to the Patriots. The White Beast. I think you're talking about Riley McCarron. Yeah, McCarron actually stuck a little bit in the league. I don't know that he ever played in regular season games, but was certainly a part of that Patriots roster. Ryan says, switching to basketball for a second, was the starting 5 Chris, P-Mac, Sanford, Perkins, and Rabracha? The answer to that question is yes. I think it'll stay that way for the time being, Ryan. But Aaron Eulis was suspended for that exhibition game. Vincent brought up merch. Spaceboy74 brings up merch. People want merch. How is the merch line going? We need those shirts with you and Don on there with some funny slogan about our offense. Spaceboy74 and Vincent, I promise that is in the works. All right. It's being worked on as we speak. So stay tuned for the merchandise drop. Tim Hoffman brings up Tim Dwight. Like Charlie Jones, was great at punt returns, but unlike Charlie, was given a chance and had over 2,200 receiving yards and 21 touchdowns. That shows you, Bob, what adequate play callers and offensive minds can do for a guy who deserved playing time in Tim Dwight. Purdue is built to destroy the West. Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Northwestern. We all have exact same strategies offensively and defensively. Purdue is the only one to be anti that. Appreciate the comment there from Spaceboy 74. And he adds, Corey just stopping by the show to say, I love the show. And let's scorch the Boilermakers for 500 yards through the air with our powerful Ferentz-led offense. That won't happen, but go Hawks anyways. Appreciate it, Spaceboy. And let's welcome our final caller of the night, Cole, our Nebraska fan's going to rile us up some more. Welcome back to the show, Cole.
What's going on?
Not much. I guess people are, I don't know why this became a controversial show, but apparently it has.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like your show. I never thought I'd be a fan of a Iowa channel, but you do a really good job. And I don't think I feel like I'm well liked in the chat. I mean, nobody's mad that I'm here most of the time. So, but yeah, I find Iowa fascinating, to be completely honest, because Iowa and Nebraska are obviously complete opposite programs in almost every speck of the imagination, just with the way they're ran and the way Kirk Ferentz is. But yeah, I don't know. I just called to talk about anything really. I mean, we played Purdue, and Purdue's DBs are not good at all. I think Nebraska, we had like 3 or 4 drives where we scored in 30 seconds just because Trey Palmer ran right by their DB and they wasn't even touched. So I know you have said before that Petrus's deep ball is probably his best part of his game, but I don't know if they have the receivers that can get behind their DBs, but I don't know. What do you think?
Good question. Great question. And Palmer, I watched that game. Palmer was unbelievable. But I agree. I don't know that Iowa has the receivers. I don't know that Iowa has quarterback to get the ball down the field. Iowa hasn't proven to be able to get the ball down the field, even though I think that is Petrus' best trait. They haven't shown that yet, and they better show it this week. I mean, if you're not going to do it this week against a secondary that sounds like it's depleted a bit and going through some problems, you're not going to do it. And that's why I believe it comes down to pass protection.
Yeah. Oh, you want to talk about pass protection? If you want to watch the worst offensive line in probably college football, just turn on a Nebraska game. I mean, I think Nebraska's offensive line is far worse than Iowa's. I don't know what you think. I've watched both quite a bit, but our tackles can't do literally anything. I think there's been like 4 or 5 games just this year alone where one of our tackles has graded a 0 according to PFF in pass protection. So yeah, and Casey's got hurt in the Illinois game. Yeah, it's just been I don't think Iowa's offensive line is as bad as you think it is if you've watched a Nebraska game.
I have watched Nebraska. They look decent against what game did I watch that early in the year? What was the game that I watched with Nebraska that
I'd like to not talk about Northwestern, Georgia Southern, or any games with Scott Frost.
Well, Northwestern, I mean, they had their moments in that game. I thought Casey Thompson was really good in that first half. I'm not saying that's the offensive line specifically.
On the first drive, I thought we were going back to the national championship, and then it all just went to hell from there. So,
you and a lot of other Nebraska fans, Cole.
But I guess we could look forward to the Nebraska-Iowa game. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's an interesting. To me, it comes down to if Casey Thompson's healthy or not. I mean, he got hurt in the Illinois game. He had 162 yards, and Illinois had only been giving up like 200 yards in the first quarter and a half against Illinois. And then our backup quarterback came in, and he had 13 or 32 yards total. So, yeah, I don't know. Ever since I watched the Rutgers game where you guys just killed Evan Simon over and over and over again, I'm just having nightmares worrying about how Lucas Van Ness is going to kill Casey Thompson again. So, but I think that's the path to victory for Iowa. Just take advantage of. I think actually in the Illinois game on 27 of 29 dropbacks they blitzed us and they made us pay. So, and I don't know if Phil Parker's the type of guy to bring pressure or to rush for, but yeah, our offensive line can't pick up blitzes to save their lives. So,
yeah, you're right. I'd like to think that Iowa will be able to combat some of what Nebraska does with Thompson simply because of its depth. I've been an advocate for this since Kelvin Bell took over the defensive line. I appreciate the fact that he has made a concerted effort to build depth in that defensive line. And that helps when you have a guy like Casey Thompson that can get out of the pocket and escape and create plays. But no, I'm not. Honestly, I mean, this is no surprise to you, Cole, that my least worrisome game is Nebraska, because I just think, we've seen it over and over again. Nebraska finds a way to beat themselves.
Yeah.
It's been a little bit better under Mickey. Is that fair? I mean, they did win a close game against Rutgers, right?
I'd say the biggest change from last year to this year is our special teams. I mean, obviously in the Iowa-Nebraska game, our special teams just crumbled, and obviously that's how you guys came back and scored and won. But this year, our special teams has actually been, I think we have like 3 or 4 blocked punts. Our punter we got from Montana, he's averaging like 50 yards a punt. He's doing really good. That's probably the biggest difference that I could say that.
Why are you guys poaching Montana so much?
I don't know. It's like we got Samori Toure, and now he's starting for the Packers.
Who just caught a touchdown pass the other night.
I don't.
That's the guy that came to my mind was Samori Toure.
Yeah. Then this year we got Brian Buschini, the punter that was there, and he's done phenomenal. I mean, he got hurt a little bit, but still, he's been our punter last year. Literally lost us a game on his own, or 2 games on his own. So, yeah, that's been a bright spot at least because I've been jealous of Iowa's special teams forever. But yeah, I think it's just going to come down to Iowa's defense. Mark Whipple, our OC this year, I love him sometimes, and sometimes he just drives me nuts because he feels, I think in the Illinois game, he had on 15 first down attempts, he threw the ball 11 times. And then we have a really good running back in Anthony Grant. But ever since Frost got fired, Whipple will just not commit to him. So, and I don't think we have the offensive line to run on Iowa anyway, but that's Whipple. I've had high expectations with what he did at Pitt, but without an offensive line, it's hard for anybody to do good. And Brian Ferentz obviously knows that.
I would hope so.
As far as Paul Chryst is not going to Iowa to be an OC. I think there's probably a 1% chance that happens. With his buyout, isn't there some rule that they can't make they can only get paid a certain amount, like what happened with Bud Meyer? Is that right? If they've got fired from a job and they have like a certain amount that they're getting paid, they can't make a certain percentage of that or something like that. Is that true? Do you know anything about that?
No, Bud Meyer was still under contract, so he was getting paid. So if Iowa had paid him, yeah, you're right. If he had paid him anything, then he would have sacrificed his pay from Colorado State. So
wouldn't Paul Chryst be in that same situation?
Well, I don't know that. That's a good question. I don't understand contractually how that works. Good question, but I don't know. And I don't know that Paul Chryst would want to get back into coaching just like that. He may never want to get back.
I think him and Matt Rule has been brought up for the Nebraska job, but I think there's zero chance he coaches at a Power 5. Like, I think he'll take a year off because he's making $45 million to do nothing. So I don't see why he'd take a job right now. But what do you think? I think Jim Leonard's is pretty much got the job for next year at Wisconsin. But what do you think about the other openings? Obviously, Harsin was just fired, but
so you got Auburn, you've got potentially Wisconsin, you've got Nebraska, you got Colorado, you got Georgia Tech.
State. Yeah, Georgia Tech, Arizona State,
and am I missing one? Vanderbilt's not open, right? Who am I missing?
I think that's it. I think.
Okay. Yeah, good question. Better question for Mark. But I am intrigued by a couple of guys. Jim Leonard was the first. I mean, I figured I didn't think that Paul Chryst would be fired midseason.
I don't think anybody did.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Campbell's a name that is intriguing, but I tell you, they keep losing.
No, like right when Frost got fired, Matt Campbell was the first name that everybody was saying, but now it's nobody is saying Matt Campbell's name. I just don't think you could sell him to our fan base right now with how fragile it is.
They're losing. So if you're an Iowa State fan, you want to retain him, then I mean, it fine. I guess if you want to, you want to keep a guy who's struggling right now, but I mean, I think he's good for the Iowa State program. That's a great question. Obviously, the guy from Baylor,
Dave Aranda.
Yeah, Randa, and then of course Rule is going to be a guy that comes up, but I don't know if like Rule, does he want to recruit? I don't know that. I mean, does he want to recruit?
That's where everybody thinks. Like, he's been brought up for Auburn, he's been brought up for Nebraska, he's been brought up for Arizona. Why would you coach when you're getting $45 million to do nothing? That's what I don't understand.
Well, some guys have the itch. I don't know. But boy, yeah, I really wouldn't be able to tell you. Other than that short list, those are the guys that I mean. I don't know if Urban. Do you think Nebraska's going to target Urban Meyer?
I want them to, but
no,
I just don't. I think if it was Urban Meyer, we'd probably already know. Just because, why would you wait? I mean, unless you're Trev Alberts and want to give Mickey a fair chance, but you can't compare Mickey and Urban Meyer. I mean, obviously they're not even close to comparable, but I would. Urban Meyer was my number one choice, but I just don't think he's going to come to Nebraska. And I think he wants to end his career on a high note, but I don't think it's going to be at Nebraska. I think it's going to be at a place like Texas A&M or somewhere we can go in and have immediate talent. All he has to do is coach it up and get it to a high level. But I don't think.
And of course, as you say, the other name. Now, as you were talking, now I blanked out on it. This shows you how late in the day it is. I was thinking, Mark Stoops. Mark Stoops would be a guy, but
He is
I
a
don't think
major name that's coming out of Nebraska right now.
I don't think he's going anywhere. Now, I wouldn't be shocked to see he's not going to Nebraska. I would be shocked if he goes to Nebraska.
I'd be careful saying he's one of the candidates that's actually been like the inside media people that are saying he is a real candidate. Like, I don't think any of us think he's no Nebraska fan would be like, Mark Stoops, but like inside out, we're hearing Mark Stoops. I don't know. I don't know what to think of Mark Stoops. I mean, he's done good at Kentucky, but
I think there's a better chance he ends up at Auburn than he ends up at Nebraska. I'll say that.
You think he'd stay in the SEC?
I don't know. I mean, do I think that a coach should do that? Probably not. But guys in the SEC do that all the time. I mean
the way I look at Stoops,
look at Lane Kiffin. Look at I mean, all these guys. They're jumping from school to school all the time.
I want Lane Kiffin, and I think it's more possible than people think. But if you're Stoops or even Lane Kiffin, why would if with the 12-team college football playoff, where do you have a better chance of making it? The SEC, whatever, West, East, or the Big Ten West? That's my mindset. And Nebraska has probably just as good NIL as both of those schools. Better than Kentucky for sure. I don't know about Ole Miss or Auburn, but
I do think, and this is the last thing I'll say on this subject, Cole. I do think that the Nebraska being in the Big Ten with Iowa right now, being in the same division, I know divisions are going away. I do think that's a factor. I don't know that Mark Stoops would want to be in that position. Maybe he would. Brett Bielema didn't blink when given an opportunity to end up at Wisconsin and now at Illinois. But Mark Stoops is a huge Iowa guy. He's been very outspoken about that. So I just don't know that he.
Do you think he'd go to Iowa if Kirk?
Yes.
Like when Kirk's done?
Yes. If he was given the chance, yes, I believe he would.
If he came to Nebraska this year and then when Kirk retires, do you think he'd jump ship from Nebraska to Iowa?
See, I don't know. That's such a weird conversation to have. I don't think he'll end up in Nebraska. I'll just say that.
I think it's, if I had to say it right now, it's probably got to be Mickey, just with the momentum. I mean, I know we've been losing, but our team is, I cannot believe, with the defensive coordinator change that we made, our defense has played night and day difference compared to the first. I thought Chase Brown was going to get over 200 yards on us, but I mean, he ran for like 140, I think, which I was happy with. I mean, he's great, but yeah, I don't know. I think the steps for Iowa beating Nebraska is being Iowa and having a great defense and not letting us score points, and that's how they're going to win. So, in case he's good for 2 turnovers a game, which is Iowa's specialty. So, I don't know. We'll see. It'll be a good game, I think, in Iowa City.
All right, Cole.
See you later.
Appreciate the phone call, sir. Have a great night.
You too.
Appreciate the call from Cole. James says, we want mercy. No, he wants merch. Mercy and merch. There's a merch idea. Thank you, James. And Space Boy says the same thing. I'll be getting that merch here launched soon, which reminds me, big shout out to the Johnny O Show on YouTube and his help behind the scenes with the tech side of everything. Check out his channel on YouTube. And one thing that he's helped make possible here in the last few days is the ability to shop Amazon with us. You can check out the link in the description below. So you'll again go to the description and a new link down there to shop the Amazon store with us. In other words, you click on the link, you can search for Hawkeye gear or anything on Amazon as long as you're doing it through that link, and you'll be supporting the show. A portion of the proceeds to Amazon will go to us here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. So that is a way to support the show. Again, shop Amazon with us. Use the link in the description below. If you're making purchases through Amazon anyways, and you like the show and want to support the show, you might as well make the purchases through that link. All right. Doesn't cost you any extra. Just make the purchases through the link. and it helps the show. And again, thank you to the Johnny O Show for helping make that possible. Okay, we need to finish this thing up here. John Buckeye with a super chat. Thank you, John. He's one of our premium subscribers. It's all about the money. Show me the money. Signed, Coach X, Y, or Z. Appreciate the super chat, John, and for being a subscriber. Howie One says, I'm not an Iowa fan, but love this show. Like this show. Thank you, Howie. Appreciate that. Space Boy, how does Iowa even try to get wide receivers to commit? Does Kirk promise them 15 to 20 targets? Then when the potential commit says, wow, that's a lot per game, Kirk says, no, that's per season. I like it. Erica, you don't have to defend your positions and everything. It's your channel, not Richard's. Appreciate that, Erica. Do appreciate that and appreciate you being here. And yeah, Richard, I don't know what to say to you, Richard. Pug Master, appreciate the super sticker from Pug Master. And Pug Master says, how does one join Corey's premium content? Well, there's not per se premium content that's exclusive to premium members, but there's a few perks. You can check out the perks before joining. You'll get early release on select videos, including a video that was released earlier today that's now available for the public, but you'll get early release on some videos and some content and some other perks as well. If you're interested in becoming a premium subscriber, Pugmaster, click join next to From the Hawkeye of the Storm. If you're doing this, you're watching this on an iPhone, you may have to log in on a desktop or at least on your browser to become a premium subscriber. It's $4.99 a month. It's a simple way to consistently support the channel. So appreciate you reaching out and asking that question. Rough Rider returns. Appreciate your support as well. The Big Time Boiler, thank you, sir. Appreciate you jumping on with us too this evening. And would love to hear your thoughts sometime where you think Iowa is in the pecking order of the Big Ten as far as program prestige and ranking. That's a great offseason topic, Grant. And you may have to remind me that's a great offseason topic and might change my viewpoint after this year. I just think it's funny I do think it's funny people who come on here to rip me and say that I have a negative agenda. Dude, listen, I don't care what anybody has to say. I've been a Hawkeye fan my whole life. I love the black and gold. I watch every game, every second. It's almost funny. It is funny to me. That's why I bring it up. I think it's so ridiculous. I'm a huge homer. All right. But when I do this show, I have to be objective and call it like I see it. So anyways, just one more thing to add to that. Lisa says, I could be wrong, but I think Iowa will take this Purdue rivalry personally this year, and our defense will get the job done. Go Hawks. Appreciate the positivity from Lisa. Thank you, Lisa, for being here. And the Big Time Boiler says, maybe a better way to phrase it, if every coaching job became open to the Big Ten, where would Iowa be ranked as far as the best destination? Good question. Let's get to our caller who's been waiting on hold forever. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line? Hello, caller. Can you hear me?
Yeah. What's up, Corey?
Hey there. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Did you fall asleep on me?
No, almost.
What you got, sir? Appreciate you waiting on hold forever.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's worth it for you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I got a quick question for you. I'll let you go to bed here soon. It's about basketball. And by the way, I'm excited for the basketball season. Anyways, Charlie Jones obviously playing for us last year. Now being at Purdue between Charlie Jones, Keegan Johnson, and Michigan Mike, come take a swim with me, you big boy.
Oh, we've got the teenagers, the teeny boppers back this evening. Oh, the little kids. Past your bedtime, buddy. You get it tucked in. No one you wouldn't want to miss. You wouldn't want to be late for chemistry tomorrow morning at 8:30. So, anyways, let's get back to our next caller. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Thank you for calling.
All right. Don't know what that was, but if it's legitimate, you can certainly call back. Okay. We're going to wrap the show up because, like I said, the high school, the Sesame Street must have ended at 11 because They're now out in full. See, all the old people that make bad decisions, they make bad decisions at 2:00 when the bars close. The teeny boppers make bad decisions at 11 when the cartoons stop. So that's what we got here, folks. It is what it is. All right. Appreciate everybody being here once again. Reminder to everybody to please subscribe to the channel. Please hit that like button as well. Helps the channel to grow, helps us in the algorithm. Sponsor the show. Email me from the eye of the storm at outlook.com. That's from the eye of the storm at outlook.com. Also, you can check out our new Amazon link to shop Amazon. You can click the link in the description below and support the channel by buying whatever you want to buy, but specifically Hawkeye merchandise. Tons of options out there. And again, shop Amazon with us to support the channel. You can become a premium subscriber by clicking the join button. We've talked about that at length. Please share the show out on social media. If you're enjoying it, others will as well. You can follow me at From the Hawkeye on Twitter, From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Facebook. And of course, I will be live following Iowa Purdue this coming Saturday. We'll have post-game coverage right here. And I don't know what the game will entail. We've got a preview dropping tomorrow, a shorter 8 to 10 minute preview for this game dropping tomorrow, so don't miss that. But again, the game in West Lafayette, 11 a.m. Saturday morning on FS1. Appreciate everybody being here once again for another episode of the show. Thank you for being here, and we will talk to you tomorrow.